Okay, so we thank Father for our praise and worship, and we give Him all the glory and the praise to be able to meet with you on another Sabbath day.
Yes.
Typically today, what we would do is, because Wicked Thanksgiving is next week, we would always have a teaching on why no one should celebrate Thanksgiving. But if you check in the channel, on our channel, we have Thanksgiving is Wicked. We already have that teaching there. So we're not going to go into Thanksgiving. In fact, we're not going to go into Thanksgiving today. We have a teaching already on YouTube. We have a couple of them on Thanksgiving. So check out those teachings if you want to really know what Thanksgiving is all about. What we're going to learn about today is color. Okay? Our people are lost, and we have to bring our people out of the bondage of being lost. The books that we're going to go into today, we're going to use the Zondervan Dictionary. We're going to go into the Apocrypha. Those are 14 books that were taken out by the Roman Catholic Church. We're going to go into the Bible, of course. We're also going to go into the book of Josephus, a historical account of our people. We're going to read into the book of Josephus, all right? So when you come here, you're going to learn. You're not coming here to prance around, dance around, sing. Here's some whacked out sermon with 2 or 3 scriptures, and you still are going to hell. Here we're going to learn, okay? So I give Father the glory and the praise. We're going to see Genesis in a whole new light. All right? So we're going to get started. Also, when we get started, how many of you have heard who, I know some of you better, Marcus Garvey. Know who he is? Being an Israelite, you should know who Marcus Garvey is. Okay? We all know who Malcolm X is, right? So they're going to assist with this teaching with a couple of videos. If you haven't never heard of Marcus Garvey speak, he's from Benjamin, and he's fabulous, even though he's been dead since 1940, I believe. But like I said, I don't listen to these new preachers because they're whacked out of their minds. I listen to the old preachers. I listen to the old, whatever they want to call themselves. All right, so we give Father the glory and the praise on this teaching. And I know that it's going to be a blessing because it's needed. If you look at our cover, you see Mr. Gorilla himself, LeBron James. Okay? Mr. Satanic LeBron James himself. And of course, a lot of things were being made by that cover in Vogue because you see the 2 devil horns coming out of his head with the letter O and the letter G. Okay? Over to the left, I was trying to find a video with Huey Newton. Everybody knows who Huey Newton is, right?
Yes.
Okay, Black Panthers.
Yes.
But the videos that they had of him before he was killed was kind of, yeah. And of course, we all know the shackles that we are afflicted with. Okay? Okay, that's our media. I give 4 or 5 of the praise. The YouTube channel is steady growing. The word is getting out there. Google Plus, it's steady growing. The word is getting out there. So I give Father the glory. I think we're close to 15,000. So I give Father all praise for that, because it's not my doing, it's His doing. We're going to teach about spiritual death. Okay? We're going to learn about the priest of the Most High, why Israel is always punished, and we're going to learn about fierce spirits later on in December. Okay? Next week, going to finally understand marriage and family conduct. Because out in the wilderness, if we can't conduct with each other, somebody's going to end up dead. Also, marriage, according to the Hebrew marriage. Okay? We're going to learn about that next week. Very important study. If you notice the studies that we have been doing, typically they are, you can say that they could be geared towards Black History Month. But I'm going to tell you something about Black History Month. It's satanic. Hispanic History Month, satanic. Native American History Month, satanic. And why is that? Why is that? Nobody knows.
Oh.
Why is that? Why are those months? Why are those months? They also have what our brothers in the islands, Naphtali. So Samoans, Hawaiians. They also have South Seas Month. Why is that?
Traditional men?
Not really traditional men, but it's to separate us. It's to separate us. If you notice, all those, this history month, that history month, it's with the 12 tribes.
Yeah.
It's satanic. And if you indulge in that stuff, oh, I'm glad that I'm African American in February. What about the rest of the months? We don't subscribe to African American Black History Month. We don't subscribe to that. Okay. So we're going to learn about marriage and family conduct. It's not going to be what you think it is, I guarantee that. All right, Feast of Dedication. Why do we have to honor the feast? It's because each feast means something, people.
Yes.
The Day of Atonement meant something. The Feast of Purim means something. The blowing of trumpets mean something. Tabernacles mean something. All these feasts mean something. And if you're not keeping with these feasts, then you're going to miss the bigger picture, as we learned when we talked about the Day of Atonement. Somebody tell me what's going to happen on the Day of Atonement. I hear a lot of whispering and I don't hear no words being formed. Come on. What happens on the day? What's going to happen on the Day of Atonement? Trumpets already blown. That's with the trumpets. That's with the blowing of trumpets. The trumpets already sounded. What's going to happen on the Day of Atonement?
Is that when that's the end of the 50th Jubilee or something?
No, you're close. What's going to happen on the Day of Atonement?
Christ coming back?
Christ is coming. Remember that?
Yeah.
Remember we broke that down?
Yeah. Well,
Dedication is going to be strictly about resurrection. It's not Hanukkah or, that Hanukkah. Kwanzaa is satanic. We don't deal with that either. Okay? So December 5th through the 12th is the Feast of Dedication. I'm going to say this. On the 12th, you have to bring a feast, something.
okay.
You have to bring something on the 12th. If you don't bring anything, don't come.
Does it have to be food?
I'm going to continue on. The color line. Okay, that's what we're going to talk about today. Yes, it has to be food because you're bringing it for the feast. Okay, color line. Our history is more than just being butlers and maids. Our history is more than just people singing and entertaining in the music industry. Our history is much more deeper than that. And yet, nobody teaches about our history. Our true history. Nobody does that. Our true history is in the Bible.
That's right.
But nobody teaches in the Bible anymore.
That's right.
Nobody does. Our history is more than just Beyonce and Jay-Z. Our history is more than just the OJs or the Temptations or the Four Tops or the Jackson 5. Our history is much more deeper than Jackie Robinson and Martin Luther King And I know I'll get a lot of pushback because I'm always harping on Martin Luther King. Martin Luther King was a Satanist. And I have proof that he was a Satanist. And when we do our teaching on the wolves, the sheep and wolf clothing, we're going to expose Martin Luther the King for what he really was. Okay? Like I said, you come here, you're going to get the truth. For years, people of the world have been led to believe that people of the Bible are white. Were white. Is white. We've been led to believe that. When the scriptures clearly show us that that is not true. And that could never, ever be true.
That's right.
Okay? I'm going to show you something later. All this stuff that's going on with France, I'm going to show you why this stuff is going on with France. I'm going to show you. Movies, television, some white people portray themselves as people of the Bible. It should matter if they were white or black. That's what Christians say. It don't matter if they were white or black. Jesus loves us all. God loves us all. It don't matter. Well, if it didn't matter, then when it starts to come out that the people of the Bible were of color, why is it now that it don't matter?
Right.
Why is it now that it don't matter? It mattered 10 years ago when they were prompting a white, blue-eyed, blonde-haired devil named Jesus. It was mattering then. You have black people. You have Judah, people of black. You have Issachar, Mexicans, with all kinds of white statues all up in their house. Gad, filled with Mother Mary. White, blonde-haired, blue-eyed. Mary did not look anything like that.
No, so did.
She was a woman of color.
That's right.
It may sound racist, but you know what? It's time for us, for our people to understand who we are and where we came from.
The truth hurts.
That is correct. The Bible is much more updated than tomorrow's newspaper. Why is that? Why is the Bible more up to date than the newspaper for tomorrow? Because of the prophecies. The prophecies that are in the book. That's why. People of color are more vulnerable and are easily to believe what is being told to them, especially when their history has been erased and constantly battered in their minds through the educational system, television, movies. The devices that we have out there are so stereotypical. So stereotypical. And not just with us. I'm saying with all the 12 tribes. It is so stereotypical. It's time to break through the truth. Before I go forward, we're going to do some history. We're going to learn some history. Okay? And we're going to learn it out the Bible. I get so tired of people saying white people are Esau. That shows your ignorance. Because there were white people before Esau was born. So see, that shows when when you hear a person talking and they're saying, oh, Esau, that's where the white people come from. That immediately lets me know that you don't read your Bible. That you're ignorant. Okay? I'm going to show you. I have this up. We played this last week, but I want to reiterate some things on this. Okay? And yes, even though Malcolm X goes the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, we all know that he was turned away from that before he was killed. But I want you to listen to the words again. All right? And we have a few more videos of Brother Malcolm. Okay, why isn't this playing?
Is it muted?
No, it's not muted.
Yes, it is.
Where is it muted at?
The laptop is muted from the Stop it.
Connor, what is your real name?
Malcolm
Malcolm X.
Is that your legal name?
As far as I'm concerned, it's my legal name.
Have you been to court to establish?
I'm gonna say something. People who are Israelites, they're doing something that I'm thinking about doing myself. You know what? I'm jumping ahead. I'll get to that later. I apologize.
What's the
I
short?
didn't have to go to court to be called Murphy or Jones or Smith. Excuse me for answering you this way.
That's
If
all
a
right.
Chinese person were to say his name was Patrick Murphy, you would look at him like he's insane, because Murphy is an Irish name, a European name, or the name that has a Caucasian or white background. And a yellow person, Chinese is a yellow man, and he has nothing to do or no connection whatsoever with the name Murphy. And if it doesn't look proper for a person who is yellow or Chinese to be walking around named Murphy or Jones or
It
Johnson,
doesn't look proper
or
that
Bunch or
our
Powell,
names are Smith,
I think it would
Jones,
be just
and all
as
this other
improper
stuff.
for a black person or the so-called Negro in this country, as we're taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to walk around with these names. And therefore he teaches us that during slavery, the same slave master who owned us put his last name on us to denote that we were his property. So that when you see a Negro today who's named Johnson, if you go back in his history, you'll find that he was once, his grandfather or one of his forefathers was owned by a white man who was named Johnson. His name was Bunch. His grandfather was owned by a
I
white
get the
man
point.
that was named Bunch.
Would you mind telling me what your father's last name was?
My father didn't know his last name. My father got his last name from his grandfather, and his grandfather got it from his grandfather, who got it from the slave master. The real names of our people were destroyed
Well,
during slavery.
was there any line, any point in the genealogy of your family when you did have to use the last name, and if so, what was it?
The last name of my forefathers was taken from them when they were brought to America and made slaves. And then the name of the slave master was given, which we refuse. We reject that name today.
You mean you won't even tell me what your father's supposed last name was or gifted last name was?
I never acknowledged it whatsoever.
Let me ask you about the status of Elijah Muhammad. First of all, is he ill?
I spoke to him today. He's in better health than he has been. He's suffering from asthmatic bronchitis.
Is that why he didn't attend your rally on last Tuesday?
The only reason that he didn't attend was his ill condition, and the weather here, especially on that particular day, was of such nature that it would have been almost insane for him to come.
Well, now, did you hold that meeting last Tuesday because it coincided with the general election, the primary election?
I think if you study the history of Mr. Muhammad's work and religious work in this country, we've had our convention on February the 26th every year for, I think, the past 33 years.
Well, now, while you don't care to discuss your former name or the name that the slave master gave to your antecedents, it is a matter of record that Muhammad's last name was Poole, Elijah Poole.
No, that's the name that his slave master gave to his grandfather or great-grandfather, but that's not his name.
Well, his mother and father thought when they called him Elijah Poole that was his name.
They didn't know any better.
Well, if they didn't know any better or not, they thought that was his name.
Yes, sir, but
So
sir,
what I'm trying to find out is when did he cease to be Elijah Poole and get to be Elijah Muhammad?
in 1931, I think it was, in Detroit, he was taught the true history of our people and made aware at that time that he was wearing an English name, and by not being an Englishman, he looked out of place. And his teacher gave him the name that he's wearing today, Muhammad, Elijah Muhammad.
All right, now when did he become what he purports to be in your literature, the son of Allah?
I've never heard the Honorable Elijah Muhammad referred to as the son
The
of
prophet
Allah.
of Allah.
I've never heard him referred to as the prophet of Allah,
What do you refer to him?
messenger of Allah.
All right, the messenger of Allah.
Righteous human beings here on this earth.
Well, now one other question. With reference to what Mr. Hurlbut asked you a little bit ago, you took a very moderate position of wanting independence without having any hatred for the whites. Do I understand that correctly?
Hatred is not involved in it whatsoever.
Well, I recall in a recent plane crash, 2 or 3 years ago, or less than that, a charter flight on Air France in which a group of people from Atlanta, Georgia were, as they say in the business, as they took off from Arley Field. And you were quoted at that time as expressing great gratification that this tragedy had occurred. Do you recall that?
I recall it.
What did you
It
say?
was,
Do you remember?
The press misinterpreted it and misrepresented it.
What did you
They
say?
said that it was made at a Muslim meeting. It wasn't. It was made at a rally of Negroes, Baptist, Methodist, Catholic, and otherwise in Los Angeles, who were rallying to protest the brutal shooting of 7 unarmed Negroes
And what did you
by
say?
heavily armed white policemen in the city of Los Angeles. And because we are a people who have been taught by the Honorable Elijah Muhammad to never carry weapons of any kind, but to get on God's side and rely on God to fight our battles for us, at the time that these brothers were shot down so brutally, I pointed out at the funeral of the brother who died that God would step in and take a hand in giving us some form of justice for the brutal killing of our brother. And when the plane crashed in France, I pointed out to the crowd at this rally that this was an act of God showing his wrath or complete resentment over the brutal form of injustice that had been inflicted upon our poor unarmed brothers.
Were you saying that or do you
Billy
believe that?
Graham, at that time, Dr. Billy Graham was in a crusade in Chicago. And the press, your papers here in this city, quoted Billy Graham of also saying that plane crash was an act of God. And if you take time to check the newspapers, I think that you'll find that this is correct. But no one thought that Billy Graham was so wrong when he attributed the crash of this plane to his God. But when we say that it come from our God, then we're looked upon as being, outrageous.
I know, but you took the position that this was a matter of satisfaction to you for
I don't
an
think
injustice done against you, and I think that that's a trifle severe.
We did not think that it was a coincidence that 120 of the whites on this plane came from the state of Georgia, a state that has the worst record in the history of America for the mistreatment of black people in this country.
Worse than Mississippi?
They maybe are a little less, Mississippi is a little less hypocritical today than Georgia, but both of them are still practicing the same thing. Now the whites in Georgia bite Negroes with a smile, whereas they used to bite them with a growl. But they're still being bitten, and we don't think that it is any worse to be bitten with a smile than it is to be bitten with a growl.
Mr. Calvert.
While we're on the subject of Mississippi, what is your organization's position of what happened in Mississippi in the past?
Such as what?
Such as the James Meredith incident and the enrollment of him in the university.
Well, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad wants justice for every one of the 20 million so-called Negroes, and to just take one Negro and stick him in college with the aid of 15,000 troops, and at a cost of $6,000, is a disgrace. It's a waste of taxpayers' money. It's a farce. It's hypocrisy. Because if it's right for one Negro to be forced into that university, then every Negro in the state of Mississippi who is qualified has the same right to go to that university. And if the government is not ready and willing to enforce the right of every Negro in the state of Mississippi, then, in my opinion, sir, it's only hypocrisy to pretend that they are for justice by pushing one Negro in and blowing it up all over the world to make it look like they're solving the problem, when millions of black people in that state are still going to segregated schools and getting an inferior education.
Does your organization encourage members to attempt to enter?
So let's get an understanding of who we are as a people and why it is so important to go back to who we were as a people as far as the Bible. First scripture is going to be Genesis chapter 10, verses 2 through 4. So you need to understand where these people come from, who these people are, who we are. And the Bible gives us a clear understanding, a total understanding on where these people come from. With the genealogies. The genealogies are not put in the Bible just to fill space. You have to understand and know where these people come from. Because in scriptures later on, you're going to see these same people. And you have to understand what these people are about, what is going on in the scriptures. All right? So we got Genesis chapter 10, verses 2 through 4. Okay, nobody wants to read? Fine. The sons of Japheth, Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshach, and Tyrus. Now, verse 2, the sons of Gomer. Those are the Galatians, Germans, Celts. Okay? Now, I'm not rocket scientist or whatever, but I do know that Germans are white.
Yes.
Let's do this now. Genesis chapter 10 is well before Esau was born. So you can't sit there and say all white people come from Esau. That is incorrect. Okay?
So wait, who was the Germans again?
Gomer. Scythians, Georgia, those are Russians. Georgia is a state in Russia. Okay, that's Magog. And you have to know where Magog is because in Ezekiel, the 38th chapter, it talks about Gog and Magog. Hence, Bible prophecy. Okay, we got to read. Madai are the Medes, who are the current day Iranians. All right? Javan are the Greeks. Tubal or Iberes are from Turkey. Meshach from Moscow. Verse 3 says, sons of Gomer, these are the sons of Gomer, begat Ashkenaz. Where did we heard Ashkenaz before?
It's a while ago.
Ashkenaz are
Which one you get the teaching on one of them 12 tribes?
the Gentiles.
On the Gentiles.
We'll get to that later. Sons of Gomer begat Ashkenaz, Reginians, Germans, Saxons, and people from Scandinavia. White people. Okay? Riphath and Togarmah. Verse 4. Javan begat Lachish, Tarshish, Kittim. Romans came from Kittim.
Okay, and Kittim came from who?
Javan. Javan were the Greeks. So the Greeks kind of separated in Greeks and then Romans. And don't go Daniel. Okay? So we have an understanding that we know that Japheth, that the sons of Japheth came from, that's where the white people originated. Now there's different shades of white people, right?
Right. Yeah.
You have darker shades of white people, you have lighter shades of white people. Okay? So let's not get ignorant and fall under the Hebrew Israelite where Esau fathered the white people. That's incorrect.
Well, Esau had many wives too, so.
But he didn't father white people. These were Japheth's sons. These were before Abraham.
Well, when it says Esau and it says his skin is red and his hair is red, now there's some people around here that matches that, but they look nothing like the Germans or, you know what I mean?
Right?
They have woolly hair too.
Yes.
And it's some twins or something around here look just like that.
Well,
They have red
because
skin, red hair, and red woolly hair.
okay, let's think of it. Back then, these were true people.
Right.
There have been so many mixtures lately.
Right.
Look at the Native American Indians. You have Native American Indians who could pass as white. You have other Native American Indians who could pass as African.
Yeah.
So you can't really look at the skin color. You can only go through the bloodline. And where do we go through the bloodline?
The father.
The Father. Right? All right, Genesis chapter 10, verse 5.
By these were the isles of the Gentiles divided in their lands, everyone after his tongue, after their families and their nations.
So the nations were divided. They went their own separate ways at this point. Okay? Japheth is the father of the Gentiles, which are the Caucasians. The Gentiles are the Europeans or the white people. Those are Gentiles. Remember the teaching that we did on Gentiles. Well, I don't think Kamal is here.
No, sure.
Okay? Let's continue on with scripture. Genesis chapter 10, verses 6 through 18. Now we're going to get into Ham. And we're going to get into Shem, Noah's other sons. Okay? So let's read Genesis chapter 10. We got verses 6 through 8 on the screen. So let's read that.
And the sons of Ham, Cush, Ethiopians, and Mizraim, Egypt, and Put, Libya, and Canaan.
Okay, so we know that Cush, those are the Ethiopians. But there's something with the Ethiopians, and I'm going to show you later on. Mizraim are the Egyptians. Put are Libyans, and Canaan, the Canaanites. These people are black.
Yeah.
All right? Verse 7.
And the sons of Cush, Seba, and Havilah, and Sabata, and Ramah, and Sabateka, and the sons of Ramah, Sheba, and Dedan. And Cush begat Nimrod. He began to be a mighty one in the earth.
All right. So we all know and understand that Nimrod was black.
Yes.
He was not Persian. Okay. All we got to do is read verse 9 through 12.
He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Wherefore it is said, even as Nimrod the mighty hunter before the Lord. In the beginning of his kingdom was Babel and Erech, and Akkad and Calneh, and the land of Shinar. Out of that land went forth Asher, and builded Nineveh, and the city Rehoboth, and Calah. And recent between Nivea and Calah, the same is a great city.
So there weren't any cities around until Nimrod came around. Nimrod started making cities and started building cities. Okay? All right, so now 13 through 18. So let's read.
And Mizraim begat Ludium and Anamim and Lehabim and Naphatim and Pathrusium and Casluhim, out of whom came Philistim and Caphatrim. And Canaan begat Sidon, his firstborn, in Heath. And the Jebusites and the Amorite and the Girgasites.
We're going to do a teaching on the Girgasites, the Jebusites, and the Amorites, because those are connected to spiritual demons. Those people are connected to spiritual demons. And in a deliverance ministry, well, first of all, in a true ministry of the Most High, these spirits attack people. And you have to understand and know what spirits is behind these people because what they were doing. Okay, that comes later. 17.
And the Hivite and the Archite and the Sinite and the Arvadite and the Zemarite and the Hamathite. And afterward were the families of the Canaanites spread abroad.
I'm going to show you something very interesting about the women of Canaan. Okay, I'm going to show you something interesting, and you may have read this scripture 100 times and not caught this, but we'll get that later. Ham is the father of the Hamites. Cush, Ethiopian black, which is the Greek word means burnt face. That's what Ethiopia means. Assyrians were black. They were not Persian. Assyrians were black because they came from Ham. Okay? And of course the famous Babylonian Hammurabi. I'll never pronounce his name.
Hammurabi.
Mizraim was Egypt. Okay, Egypt means black. Okay? Goliath was a Philistine out of Mizraim. So I'm going to show you why Mizraim is so important in Bible history, and Moors are Egyptians.
So Goliath was black.
Goliath was black. Hud was from Libya. Canaan are the black Palestinians. And what I'm showing about the black Palestinians is that Palestine right now is occupied by Ishmael. It's not occupied by the people who were originally there, which were black. Okay? Or people of color. Okay? All right, Genesis chapter 10, verses 22 through 29. After that.
The children of Shem, Elam, and Asher, and Aphrodite, Chaldeans, and Lud and Aram.
So Aphrodite is where the Chaldeans. Chaldeans were the ones who came and took over Job and his family. Those were Chaldeans.
Joe?
Job, yes. Read the book of Job. Job, the first chapter. It talks about the Chaldeans. They're the ones who took Job's animals and stuff like that. Okay? Verse 23 and read.
And the children of Aram, Uz, and Hol, and Gether, Jether, and Mash. And Aphrodite begat Salah, and Salah begat Eber.
Eber is where the Hebrews started. Okay? I'm sorry, not Eber. Yeah, Eber is. Let's read verse 25.
And unto Eber were born two sons. The name of one was Peleg. For from here comes the family of Abraham. For in his days was the earth divided, and his brother was Jochatan. And Jochatan begat Almadad and Selef and
Hazarmaveth.
and Jerah and Adoram and Uzal and Diklah and Obal and Abimelech and Sheba and Ophir and Havilah and Jobab, and all these were the sons of Jochatan.
And all these were dark colored people. Okay? Peleg is where Eber is the father of Peleg. Peleg is where the descendants of Abraham come from. Okay? Noah and his wife created Japheth, Ham, and Shem. And we all know that we are from Shem.
Shem.
Okay? After the dispersion of the people by the Most High at the Tower of Babel, each one went into their own region. Japheth and his family went into Europe. Shem and Ham stayed in the area. Okay? Mizraim, or Egypt, had some of his family when they went into the land now called Africa. But it wasn't called Africa then, and I'm going to show you in scripture what it was called. Cush had a very large area which even went into what is now called the Middle East. Remember, Nimrod was a Cushite, and Nimrod was in Babylon. Babylon is current day what? Iraq.
Iraq.
Okay?
Who taught you, please? Who taught you to hate the texture of your hair? Who taught you to hate the color of your skin to such extent that you bleach to get like the white man? Who taught you to hate the shape of your nose and the shape of your lips? Who taught you to hate yourself from the top of your head to the soles of your feet? Who taught you to hate your own kind? Who taught you to hate the race that you belong to? So much so that you don't want to be around each other. No, before you come asking Mr. Muhammad, does he teach hate? You should ask who yourself, who taught you to hate being what God gave you. We teach you to love the hair that God gave you. Here you way out in the middle of the ocean, can't swim. And you're worried about someone that's in the bathtub and can't swim. We don't steal, we don't gamble, we don't lie, and we don't cheat. And that also deprives the government of revenue. Because you can't get into a whiskey bottle without getting past the government seal. You can't open a deck of cards without getting past the government seal. There's a white man who makes the whiskey and then puts you in jail for getting drunk. He sells you the cards and the dice and puts you in jail when he catches you using them. So he's against us because we fix it where he can't catch you anymore. You take the dice out of your hands and the cards out of your hands and the whiskey out of your head. The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman. And as Muslims, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad teaches us to respect our women and to protect our women. And the only time a Muslim really gets real violent is when someone goes to molest his woman. We will kill you for our woman. I'm making it plain, yes. We will kill you for our woman. We believe that if the white man will do whatever is necessary to see that his woman gets respect and protection, then you and I will never be recognized as men until we stand up like men and place the same penalty over the head of anyone who puts his filthy hands out to put in the direction of our women.
I'm going to go a step further. I'm going to go a step further. We all know who taught us how to hate ourselves because we can't accept our names. We can't accept our Hebrew names. So the white man, Esau, perpetrated all that stuff to make you understand. The media has also done it also.
Yeah.
They prompt these people in front and they make you believe that you have to be 130 pounds with long flowing hair with light skin to be accepted. They make you believe that. Women of Judah, they make you jealous of women of Issachar because they can grow hair. Their hair is long. Their hair is silky. Your hair is knotted up. You are a picture of Christ. They make you think that your nose is like an ape or a gorilla. And they do that to Issachar as well, and Nadab and Gad too, because their noses are kind of spread out there too. They do the same thing. But we have to understand and know that in order for us to know who we are, we got to love each other. We have to love ourselves first. Yes, the most disrespected woman on this planet is the black woman. Issachar is a running second. Because the stuff that I hear Issachar talk about when I'm at work about what their men do, it's a shame. They're sitting at home working on cars while the woman is out working and providing, working 10 to 12-hour days. And I hear them, they're not speaking Spanish, because I don't know Spanish. They're speaking English in the break room. Pablo, whatever his name is, he's at home, he's fixing on the cars, I'm so tired and this and that. They're getting disrespected just like you're being disrespected. But see, this ministry is about raising up men to be men of the Most High.
That's right.
That's what this ministry is about. And in order to do that, you have to understand on where you are, where do you fit in society. 1913 BC, before Christ, there was a famine in the land, and Abraham and his wife Sarai journeyed to the land of Egypt. But before he entered the land of Egypt, he said to Sarai, "Behold, now I know that you are a fair woman to look upon. And then when it come to pass, we're going to say that you're my sister." Remember that? We're going to say that you're my sister because when the Egyptians see you, Sarah, they're going to kill me if they know that I'm your husband because they want you for themselves. This is what Brother Malcolm was saying earlier about who hates yourself. Who taught you to hate yourself?
That's right.
The incident came to pass, but the Josephus said in his commentaries, reference, "Behold, now I know that thou art a fair woman, knowing that you are beautiful. I realize that your beauty is now a source of danger, particularly since the Egyptians are dark-skinned and ugly." See, when you read the book of Josephus, he says it like it is. He says it like it is. Some people don't like the book of Josephus because he goes against what Herodias wrote and all these other scholars of that day wrote. He basically calls them hypocrites and everything else. You got to read the book. Besides being a ridiculous comment, the ridiculous comment, the point that I'm trying to point out is that the fact that Josephus stated that the Egyptians were people of color. Okay? Some things Josephus says is kind of like racist. Zondervan Bible Dictionary. Let's read the definition of Ham. Okay? He was the youngest son of Noah, born probably about 96 years before the flood. One of 8 persons to live through the flood, he became the progenitor of the dark races, not the Negroes. But the Egyptians, Ethiopians, Libyans, and Canaanites. That's very key because churches today tell you that we are under the curse of Ham. And we're not under the curse of Ham. Okay? There's a trick involved in this because they say that he became the progenitor, speaking as if his forefathers before him and his brothers also did not have dark skin already. If Ham was dark, then where did he get his darkness from? He got it from Noah.
Right. That's all.
Okay? Now, remember when I said earlier that there's no such thing as a white person? That there are different shades of white people. Look at Sarah Bullock. And look at Scarlett Johansson. You see, Scarlett Johansson is a light shade of white. Sandra Bullock is a dark shade of white. Are you following me right now?
Yeah, they did say she was black.
Sandra Bullock?
She was of color.
I don't know. But she's a dark. She's a darker shade of white than the Johansson or the woman from Kill Bill, whatever her name is.
She was white.
She is a white shade of white. Okay? Let's learn something. Shem was dark. Japheth was dark, so we have to have access to who they were in this. Ethiopians, Egyptians, Libyans, Canaanites were all sons of Ham. Japheth was dark, but Japheth could have been Sandra Bullock dark.
Right.
Are y'all following me? Okay. The original Canaanites are not South African, as there is no place in Scripture that teaches that they went into South Africa. We know that the Canaanites did not go to South Africa because the Canaanites took the land that is now called Israel. That's where they moved to. Right? The Canaanites were in Israel before the children of Israel got to Israel.
Yeah. Yes, they were.
All right.
Yeah, that's with Jericho.
Okay, modern day maps show the separation between northern and southern Africa, as we know it, as the original Hamites occupied in the north. So we know the original Hamites occupied Libya, Egypt, Put, right?
Right.
Northern Africa. There's also parts of northern Africa that the children of Israel settled in, also like Kenya. And you can read that in the book From Babylon to Timbuktu. A lot of information in this book, Babylon to Timbuktu. Okay?
Well, I think to teach a man to hate himself is much more criminal than teaching him to hate someone else. And look at you. Who taught you to hate yourself?
Look at that.
Well, I got the book right here, and they're open to each and every brother complete inspection. Keep your hands off of that thing there. So you want to see the financial books, huh? Yeah. Well, there he is. There he is. You done see them. The meat of the tyranny.
What makes the so-called Negro unable to stand on his own two feet? He has no self-confidence. He has no proud confidence in his own race. Because the white man destroyed your and my past. Destroyed our knowledge of our culture. And by having destroyed it, now we don't know we have any achievements. Any accomplishment.
You don't know.
And as long as you can be convinced that you never did anything, you can never do anything.
That's your papa talking to you now. That's come on. Just hit it one more time.
And the media still portray us like this.
Who's on there? Ain't nobody in there but us niggas.
This is why the white man, his little children, he tells them about George Washington, Abraham Lincoln, all these white heroes. But we are never taught about any black hero. Only someone we're shown in history is my grandfather was picking cotton.
They don't talk about being educated people. They don't do that. They talk about history. This is what they portray. We can dance. This is what they do.
Hey, hey, Uncle Dudley, be glad to Dr. Beats, be glad to Dr. Beats, be on the Mississippi.
Cotton picking don't move me. No. But when it comes to teaching the black people something about great black men who stood their ground, who were scientists, who were civilizers, who were fathers of culture and civilization, the white man has shrewdly written that role out of the textbook. And today, the effect that it has on you and me, we don't think we can stand on our own 2 feet.
Judge Regan, I see you someplace.
I'm pretty busy.
Yes, but I just want to ask if you cared about it.
Care about what?
About who in my house, night school last year.
Another baby?
Yeah, you sure guessed it, you heard?
What's his name?
Oh, we call him L.R. Lars Rigby Livingston.
Named him after me, did you?
Yes, Lars Rigby. I told my wife yesterday, I said, honey, I know Judge sure gonna be gratified.
Well, of course, Les, I appreciate the honor.
Yes,
I suppose a compliment and I ought to do something for it.
yes, that's what I thought.
You come over to my place tomorrow and I'll give you a job.
Yeah.
Rake and leave.
Give him a job.
I asked you to wait.
We wake up, we clean up, and we stand up. And once we can stand up like a man on our own feet, we stop begging the white man. And we stop apologizing to the white man. We stop compromising with the white man. Then the world will look at us with recognition and respect. But as long as you run around here wearing the white man's name, bragging about you one of the Jones, or one of the Browns, or one of the Smiths, as long as you run around here bragging about your part in this so-called American democracy, then you'll always be looked down upon as a chump by the white man. You never will be given recognition nor respect. Your problem will continue to go unsolved, and we'll still be in the same rut or ditch 1,000 years from now that we're in right now.
There are a lot of things is about the name. I'm going to get to that in a second, especially on what certain brothers are doing now. Okay? A lot of it's about the name. But how is it that you can't sit there and continually allow people to tell you who you are and where you come from and what you are about. You have to start looking at your own history. People sit up there and they hold their name so dear when they were given to you by the white slave master. Not only that, the Native Americans, the name was given to them by the white U.S. cavalry. They named them Hopi. They named them Pima. They weren't called that. They weren't calling that before then.
No, they knew there was a tribe of
Issachar and Asher. Their name wasn't Chavez and Sanchez and all that other car garbage. They were given that by the Spaniards. They had Hebrew names. It's time to wake up. It's time for everybody to wake up. And until we sit there and wake up, we're still going to be captive in this captivity. Because we want to hold on to Anchavarria or Anchareas or Jones or Smith or Connor. We want to still hold on to that. We look down, so we cannot look down on parts of Africa that are suffering because they are not treated. That's because they are Hamites. We're going to travel through Jacob's trouble, and they have to go into other parts of Africa. We're so much in Jacob's trouble right now. So much in Jacob's trouble right now that we can't even identify who we are as a people. Or when it's brought forth on who we are, we reject it. Well, I'm going to keep that name, or I'm going to keep that. That's my heritage. You don't even know who you are. But you're claiming some heritage that came over from Europe. That's what we're doing. And that's with all the 12 tribes. It's not just Judah.
And that's why our people are dealing so much with mental illness. A lot of our people are dealing with, what's it called? DID and personality disorders and stuff like that. Because since we don't know who we are, we've been operating in what we see portrayed by the media and all that, so we don't know who we are, and that brings on different spirits and craziness in the head.
Correct.
So
the Hamites, they have to go into other parts of Africa so they can get work. The northern parts of Africa were occupied by the original Hamites, but the rest of the landmass was not habited. Only northern Africa was habited at this time.
Well, let me ask you a question. When do you think black women really started hating themselves? Because I remember in the 60s and the 70s, my auntie, they didn't wear straight hair.
Mm-hmm.
They wore their natural hair. They wore afros and, they wore their natural hair. So, because I don't remember seeing straight hair growing up. Like we see it on, women of Judah. I don't remember seeing that growing up.
Right, because it goes in cycles.
Oh, that's what it was.
They had straight hair, If you look at the pictures in the 60s and the 50s, in the 40s, they would wear their hair straight. When the Black Panther Party came about,
okay.
that's when we started saying black is beautiful.
Black
And
power.
and the women started to wear their natural hair and their afros and whatever it takes. When the Black Panther Party died out in the late 70s, it went back to the perm. They went back to the processing again, up until recently. Now it's a change again with the Hebrew Israelites. Understanding that we are beautiful once again. Exodus chapter 11, verses 6 through 7, and let's read it.
And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it any more. But against any of the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue against man or beast, that ye may know now how that the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and the Israel.
There is a difference between Egyptians and Israel. Not in color, because Egyptians were black, Israel was black at this time, and I'm going to show you that. But if you don't know who you are, Israel, and that goes for all 12 tribes, if you don't know who you are, then how are you going to understand that the Most High is not going to even allow a dog to move against you?
Oh, wow, that makes sense.
How are you not going to understand that? That God is not, that the Most High is not going to allow anything, man or beast, to come against you because He knows who you are. You don't know who you are. The Most High puts a difference between us and the Africans. We are not the same. Joel chapter 3, verses 3 and 4. Okay? You are not the same as the people of the world. It's time to wake up. It's time to wake up. Thanksgiving is coming around next week. It's tradition. I have to do it because it's tradition. No, you don't. You already know and understand that it's pagan, that it's wicked, that over 100 million people have died because of that holiday. Well, I gotta keep it because my grandmama does it and I don't want to hurt her because she may be dead next year. In the meantime, you're just piling up the sin book in your life. Let's get Amos chapter 5. You're just piling on the sin book. Well, I got something for you for those people, and I was not going to go there, but I'm going there.
Take it there.
Amos chapter 5, verse 20. Let's read it. Sorry, just got off track. Not really. Thank you, Holy Spirit. Amos chapter 5, verse 20. Let's go.
Amos chapter 5, verse 20.
Read.
Shall not the day of the Lord be darkness and not light, even very dark and no brightness in it?
No brightness in it. 21.
I despise your feast days, and I will not smell in your solemn assemblies.
He hate and despise those feast days that are not his feast days. Go ahead.
Though ye offer me burnt offerings and your meat offerings, I will not accept them.
So your prayers at the Thanksgiving table, Christmas table, New Year's Eve table, your prayers are not being heard. Go ahead.
Neither will I regard the peace offerings of your fat beasts.
He's not going to regard anything that you put in front of him. Go ahead.
Take thou away from me the noise of thy songs.
We'll get to Christmas on that one.
For
You
I,
don't want to hear no Christmas carols. Go ahead.
for I will not hear the melody of thy viols.
He won't hear it. That's good enough. All right, let's get Joel chapter 3, verses 3 and 4. I wanted to put that out there because a lot of people are stuck on, oh, I don't want to offend my great-grandmama because she's on her deathbed. Your great-grandmama probably has already got one foot in hell already. By you not saying, you know what, great-grandmama, I want to sit down and I want to talk to you about the holidays. I want to talk to you about that. By you not doing that, you're just as guilty as she is. That's probably why my relatives don't want to talk to me today. That's true. I'm not, yeah, I was about to say that, but I guess I don't have to. Joel, chapter 3, verse 3 and 4. Let's read.
And they have cast lots for my people, and have given a boy for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink.
We were sold into slavery, and we weren't just the only ones. All 12 tribes, if you do the history, all 12 were sold into slavery at one point, a time, or another. Verse 4.
Yea, and what have ye to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon?
Who's Tyre and Zidon? We're going to explain that next. Go ahead.
And all the coast of Palestine, will ye render me a recompense? And will ye recompense me swiftly and speedily? Will I return your recompense upon your own head?
Tyre and Zidon represents the Africans and the Palestinians, which are the Arabs, have linked up and sold us into the hands of the Edomites. That's Tyre and Zidon. Okay?
Oh, yeah.
But we did it to ourselves. We sold our own selves into slavery. We started that. It wasn't the white man. It was us. I'm showing you. Joseph, one of the 12 sons of Jacob from the 12 tribes of Israel, was sold to some Ishmaelites by his own brothers. And who was the forerunner? Judah.
Now you see why Judah are called like crabs in a bucket.
Right. Judah was the forerunner. Reuben didn't want anything to do with it. I'm going to show you. But Judah was right there. Sell it. We want money. And ever since then, that's all we hear from black people. So-called black people. Some of you house niggas. Oh, we just want some money. We just want a good job and all that. It's ridiculous. It's so many house niggas that are running around this place today. It's not even funny. But you tell somebody you're really from the tribe of Judah and your Hebrew Israelite name is this. No, it ain't. I was born with this name. I'm gonna die with this name. That mind has been programmed already. And I wouldn't waste my time with that mind. Genesis chapter 37 verses 1. If I'm talking harsh, then oh well. Because we need to know who we are as a people. We need to wake up and know who we are as a people. Stop standing by and letting somebody else do it. That's another problem with Judah, Issachar, Gad, all 12 of them. Somebody else will do it. Somebody else will tell them. Let's read it.
And Jacob dwelt in the land wherein his father was a stranger, in the land of Canaan. These are the generations of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brethren.
He was 17 years old. Keep that in mind. Go ahead.
And the lad was with the sons of Bela and with the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives, and Joseph brought unto his father their evil report. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children.
I'm stopping you there. For those of you who are going to have children, the worst thing that you can do is love one child more than the other. Your children should be loved equally. That's the worst thing that you can do is say, oh, look at little Johnny with his A's and B's, and look at little Mary. She's just as dumb as a bunch of rocks. That's the worst thing that you can do. Because as we're going to find out what happened with Joseph when Israel was showing favor towards Joseph, and how did the other brothers feel? Read.
Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age, and he made him a coat of many colors.
Now, it says he was the son of his old age, but Joseph isn't the youngest one. Right? Benjamin was the youngest one. Joseph was second youngest. So, you see where Jacob was showing favor towards Joseph? Even in scripture it says that he was the son of his old age, meaning that he was the last son, which isn't true. Are you catching that?
You would think that he was the last son.
Right. Verse 4 in reading.
And when his brethren saw that their father loved him more than all his brethren, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him.
They couldn't do anything with him. If you put a child on a pedestal and the other children are left down, those children who you feel are inferior, they're going to hate that one that's above. Which they're not supposed to do that. Joseph was not liked because he was favored by Jacob. Parents need to be careful. So let's go down to verses 12 and 13 in Genesis 37 chapter. And let's read.
And his brethren went to feed their father's flock in Shechem. And Israel said unto Joseph, do not thy brethren feed the flock in Shechem? Come, and I will send thee unto them. And he said to him, here I am.
So his brothers were out in the field feeding the flocks. And here comes Joseph with his multicolored coat. That just added fuel to the fire. Here comes Joseph. They probably got out in the fields to get away from Israel and Joseph.
Yeah.
And Jake and Israel sends his son, go out there. Wear your new coat. Verse 18. Genesis 37:18. We're going to get I'm going here for a reason. We're going to get an understanding on this when we get to Egypt. Okay? Genesis 37:18, and let's read it.
And when they saw him afar off, even before he came near unto them, they conspired against him to slay him.
They were conspiring when they saw that bright-colored, multicolored coat. They immediately, here he comes. What are we going to do? Let's do this. Let's do that. That's what happens. Sibling rivalry. That's what happens. First case of sibling rivalry in the Bible. They plotted to kill Joseph, and it was just because they didn't like him. Jacob was showing favor to Joseph, and they didn't like it. Okay, we're in the same chapter, Genesis 37. We're going to be in verses 21 to 28. Okay? And let's read.
And Reuben heard it and delivered him out of their hands and said, let us not kill him.
So Reuben was like, no. Reuben was the oldest. Reuben said, no, let's not kill him. No. But, let's read verse 22.
And Reuben said unto them, shed no blood, but cast him into this pit that is in the wilderness, and lay no hand upon him, that he might rid him out of their hands, to deliver him to his father again.
Now, because you all read other books, in the book of Jasher, Reuben did this because later on, Reuben was going to go back to the well and pull Joseph out. That's why he did that. He wasn't doing it because, oh, I hate him, I'm going to just throw him down the well. No, he did it for a reason. He was going to go back and pull Joseph out of the well. But let's read verse 23.
And it came to pass, when Joseph was come unto his brethren, that they stripped Joseph of his coat of many colors that was on him. And they took him and cast him into a pit, and the pit was empty. There was no water in it.
There was no water in the pit. Reuben didn't want to kill Joseph, and in fact he was coming back to get Joseph out of that pit. But something happened. Verse 25, and let's read it.
And they sat down to eat bread, and they lifted up their eyes and looked, and behold, a company of Ishmaelites came from Gilead with their camels bearing spices and balm and myrrh, going to carry it down to Egypt.
So they saw this congregation, or this convoy of Ishmaelites, who we know are the current day who? Arabs. They see these Arabs coming. I always say history repeats itself. One of those poster boards that we have talks about the Arab slave trade. History repeats itself. So here, they saw the Ishmaelites coming. Okay, verse 26.
And Judah said unto, and Judah said, Judah. What did he say? Judah said unto his brethren, what profit is it if we slay our brother and conceal his blood?
So Judah, what's going on? Judah is always scheming.
Get rich quick schemes.
Always scheming. Look at that. There goes some Ishmaelites. We don't get no money by killing him. Let's make some money off of him. Verse 27 and read.
Come and let us sell him to the Ishmaelites, and let not our hand be upon him, for he is our brother and our flesh. And his brethren were content. Then there passed by Midianites, merchantmen.
Midianites. Remember earlier when I said Midianites are black people. Okay, let's read.
And they drew and lifted up Joseph out of the pit, and sold Joseph to the Ishmaelites for 20 pieces of silver, and they brought Joseph into Egypt.
20 pieces of silver is what they sold their brother for.
So the Midianites sold him.
No, the Midianites didn't sell him. His brother sold him. The Midianites pulled him out. They sold him to the Midianites. The Midianites sold him to the Ishmaelites, Arabs.
How many times did he sold?
He was going to be sold again too. All right, for 20 pieces of silver, right? But this is what they did. And why do you think and this is why you get an understanding on why Puerto Ricans and blacks always are fighting. It's been going on since this time. Who came from the Puerto Ricans? What tribe came from the Puerto Ricans? Ephraim. Who was Ephraim? Son of Joseph.
Oh, yeah.
Are you getting it now?
Yeah, I didn't make the connection. Yeah, okay.
All right.
Oh, yeah. I didn't make I didn't make it at first.
We understand now why Puerto Ricans don't like black people. It goes back to this. Even though they may not even know one scripture in the Bible, it's spiritual. It's spiritual. Keep the niggas and the spicks and the beaners separate so that they won't understand and know that they're all related in the first place. Keep them separated, so they'll know that they are not the chosen people of God. Keep them separated, so therefore we can divide and conquer every single one of them. Keep them separated. Have the Puerto Ricans believe that they hate black people. It's spiritual. Have the Native Americans believe that black people hate them. Have them all believe that the Jewish powers, that they love them. Genesis 37:36. And let's get it.
And the Midianites sold him into Egypt unto Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh's and captain of the guard.
So there's another time he was sold. Midianites, Ishmaelites, then back to the Midianites, now into Egypt.
Wow.
Joseph was the first person sold into slavery, and they were sold into slavery by Judah. What goes around comes around. So we can stop blaming the white man for bringing us into slavery. We did it to ourselves. And once we realize we did it to ourselves, we repent from that crazy deed. Let's get Genesis 25, verse 1 and 2. I don't have it here. Let's get it. The Midianites were also Abram's sons. Okay? And the Midianites lived with the Ishmaelites. The Arabs were the first people to buy us as a slave. How can a black person be called a Muslim? The Arabs then sold Joseph to the Egyptians. This is how we ended up in Egypt. Then Joseph was put in prison for rape. How many of our men have been falsely accused of rape and been placed in prison? Joseph is the same way.
And who accused them of rape?
The white women.
Not a black woman.
Well, this time a black woman did do it. Okay? But how long, with the 12 tribes, how many times have men of the 12 tribes have been falsely accused of doing something they didn't do? One of our brothers on the poster board was falsely accused. Let's read Genesis 25. 1 and 2. Let's get it.
Then again, Abraham took a wife, and her name was Keturah.
Keturah.
And she
now, we all know that Sarah has died at this point. Abraham only had one wife at a time. We're not talking about Hagar. That's something totally different. A man, when you go into a woman, you marry her. I'm just putting it out there. Per the Bible. And the Bible trumps the laws of this land. So the moment you decided that you want to go up into a woman, you marry that woman. So I was about to say something. Let's read it. Genesis 25, 1 and 2.
And she bare him Zimran, and Jokshan, and Medan, and Midian.
Midian, go ahead.
And Ishbak, and Shuah. And Jokshan begat Sheba and Dedan. And the sons of Dedan were Ashurim and Letushim and Leomim. And the sons of Midian, Ephah and Epher and Hanok and Abedad and Eldah. All these were the children of Keturah.
Keturah, who was Abraham's wife. The Midianites are black. Now, let's get to the false accusations, because we get that all the time. Genesis 39, verses 1 through 3. And I'm doing this because I'm showing on who the people of color are. Okay? Genesis 39, 1 through 3. Let's read it.
And Joseph was brought down to Egypt, and Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh, captain of the guard, an Egyptian, bought him of the hands of the Ishmaelites.
So he was on an auction block, and they had him probably naked. Pick a nigga. They had him naked, and he was being raffled off, and Potiphar bought him. Let's read.
Which had brought him down thither. And the Lord was with Joseph, and he was a prosperous man, and he was in the house of his master the Egyptian. And the master saw that the Lord was with him, and that the Lord made all that he did to prosper in his hands.
So the Lord was with Joseph. Joseph. Okay? Egyptologists are ignorant. I'm just putting it out there. Brothers who are full-blooded Judah running around looking like an Egyptian.
Is that a religion?
Yes, it is. Joseph was highly favored by the Most High, and Potiphar's wife, she also saw that. See, when the wife ain't getting none, then when she start looking at the hired servants, it's like, okay, he looks good. He's well favored. The Most High is working with him. I got to have that. Genesis 37, verses 8 and 9.
7 and 8.
7 and 8, read it.
And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, "Lie with me."
Now she said, "Lie with me" several times. Lie with me, Joseph. Lie with me, Joseph. But see, Joseph is not a nigga. He's a man of the Most High. And he's not going to sit up there and say, you know what? Yeah, I'll lay with you because Potiphar is way over in Alexandria somewhere. He won't find out. No, he's a man of the Most High. He's not going to just throw his stuff on a crap table. Read.
But he refused, and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand.
So Joseph was saying, you know, I'm not going to do that. That's wrong. He kind of, even before the 10 Commandments, he knew, thou shalt not commit adultery. 10 Commandments wasn't written then. Genesis 39 and 10. Okay? Let's go ahead.
And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her to lie by her, or to be with her.
Every single day.
Lust.
Lie with me, Joe. That lust demon was firing up. Lie with me, Joseph. Lie with me, Joseph. Two things. He would have been put in prison, but also he would have lost the favor, which is more important, he would have lost the favor of the Most High. Anytime that you sin, especially fornication, you lose the covering of the Most High. Just thought I put it out there. Especially fornication. She pursued him day and night, but he was a real man of the Most High. Then she corners him. She corners him. Let's get verse 12 and let's read it.
And she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand and fled, and got him out.
He was naked. He ran out of his garment. She had his whole cloak, everything. And she was holding on to that with dear life. Lie with me, Joseph. That lust demon was at 100%.
So that was going to be the time a woman raped a man in the Bible.
Joseph was being a servant of the Most High. He ran out of his clothes till he was naked. A lot of men don't do that. They don't run and get away. They say, you know what, I'm just going to take it off. I'm just going to give it to you just this one time. that one time can lead you to a world of hurt and damage. Genesis chapter 39, verses 16 to 20. And let's see what happened, because Joseph was a man of the Most High. Read.
And she laid up his garments by her until his Lord came home.
So she kept that coat. She's like, you know what? This house nigga gonna sit up here and he's gonna reject me? Oh, I got something for him. And that's why men of the Most High have to be men of the Most High, because women are wicked. Most women are wicked. And they'll use whatever it takes to trap men. But not Israelite women, especially not the women in this place.
That's right.
Because I guarantee you, you won't be sitting here if you plotting and scheming on getting sex for men to keep him bound around you because you need a man on your side. Read.
And she spake unto him according to these words, saying, The Hebrew servant which thou hast brought unto us came in unto me to mock me. And it came to pass, as I lifted up my voice and cried, that he left his garment with me and fled out.
19.
And it came to pass, when his master heard the words of his wife, which she spake unto him, saying, After this manner did thy servant to me, that his wrath was kindled.
Now remember when Brother Malcolm was saying that we protect our women? We will kill if somebody disrupts our women? Look what Potiphar is doing. He's an Egyptian. And he did what to you? Oh, no. Where is he at? Because if I don't kill him, if somebody don't take him out of here, I'm going to kill him. Read.
And Joseph's master took him and put him into the prison, a place where the king's prisoners were bound. And he was there in
the prison. Okay, he was in prison. So she set him up. How many times has this happened? How many times? Everybody know who William Brown is, right?
Yep.
We should all know who William Brown is.
Who William Brown is? Come on, everybody. Who's William Brown?
In the late 1800s, Omaha, Nebraska was a booming western city that was soon to become #1 in the world in livestock meat production. In the early 1900s, nearly 80% of Omaha's population, of an estimated 125,000 people, had livestock-related jobs. These workers were primarily of European descent, and from 1910 to 1919, their participation in labor strikes in the First World War left many vacancies at the meat packaging plants. To fill the void, company owners vigorously recruited blacks in the southern states. There were ads in papers in Omaha and throughout the South that beckoned blacks to come north to better wages and living conditions. The wages that blacks were paid at the Omaha plants were lower than white workers, but it was significantly more money than they could earn in the South. Hundreds of blacks began to replace white plant workers, and by 1915, a burgeoning black community was established near the meat packaging plants in South Omaha and the near north side of the city. A new African-American newspaper called The Monitor began circulation in the summer of 1915. The Monitor was published weekly with news stories, columns, and advertising that was vital to establishing a strong sense of community among blacks in Omaha. By 1920, over 10,000 African Americans were living in Omaha. Because of the rapid growth in the African American population and employment situations at the meat packaging plants, racial tension began to build in Omaha. This tension culminated in the summer of 1919, when one plant worker in particular met a horrible fate.
This was the period of red hot summer. This is the period whereby that what it is, you already had the riots in St. Louis, other places. And now you have them in Omaha. What happened was they had a woman say that she had been molested or had been sexually abused by a black man.
Same thing.
And that's all that needed to be said.
On September 25th, 1919, Agnes Lobeck identified 40-year-old Will Brown as the man who attacked her. Brown was then arrested and taken to the Douglas County Courthouse. Before Brown was even identified, a civic storm was already brewing in Omaha due to a series of inflammatory stories published in the Omaha Bee and struggles for political power between racketeer Thomas Dennison and Omaha's mayor Edward Smith.
What's interesting is that the mayor attempted to keep them from taking Will Brown out of jail, and he suffered from an inch of his life being taken from him. And that was really the intent from the very beginning, to really kill him, as well as to bring about the racial tension even more so.
On the evening of September 28, 1919, a crowd of an estimated 5,000 to 10,000 people gathered outside the Douglas County Courthouse and demanded that Brown be handed over to them. Inside the courthouse, a frightened judge and other prisoners sent a note down to the crowd, saying that they would surrender Brown. The bloodthirsty crowd could not wait and rushed into the courthouse to seize Brown. Once in the hands of the crowd, Brown was beaten, hung from a lamppost, and shot more than 100 times. Actor Henry Fonda, at the time just 14 years old, witnessed the horrendous event from a second-story window at his father's printing company across the street from the courthouse. The ghastly melee ended with the burning of Will Brown's body. An Omaha World Herald photographer captured one of the most infamous photographs in American history. After the riot, federal troops were called in, and for 2 days, Omaha was under martial law. Even though over 100 people were arrested in connection with the riot and the murder of Will Brown, no one was charged. For Omaha's black community, an editorial picture published in the Monitor spoke volumes. Will Brown was buried in 1919 in an unmarked grave in Powders Field at Forest Lawn Cemetery in Omaha. 90 years later, in July of 2009, a man from Riverside, California, Chris Hebert, who has no ties to the city of Omaha and has never visited before, was moved to pay $450 of his own money for a marker for Will Brown's grave. Hebert said that he watched a special on actor Henry Fonda, which mentioned the riot and how it affected his life and his acting career. Hebert also said that he hopes people will stop by the headstone and reflect on what happened to Will Brown in 1919, so that we may never let ourselves sink again to this level of inhumanity.
All because the woman said that he raped her. Sam Hose. Nothing. That's his body. They chopped off his arms and his legs and hung him up there naked.
James Allen has collected a photographic record of racial violence in the South. For the past 20 years, he's found horrifying pictures in the family albums of ordinary Southern homes. Many are postcards that were mass-produced as souvenirs.
What a
Some of
pleasant
these
birthday
images
under that picture.
were printed in the tens of thousands and sold for a dime or $1 a piece. Some of the postcards tell you where to write and the discount you'll get if you buy 1, 10, or 100. They were sold in drugstores and pharmacies. They were sold on the street. I purchased a photograph from a woman. The photographer sold them door to door. Her mother bought the image for $2. A murder that is of particular interest to me was of a 17-year-old boy by the name of Jess Washington in Waco, Texas, in 1916. He was seriously mentally challenged. The wife of the farmer that he worked for was found dead. He was arrested. He was brought to trial. Trial took from 10 until 12. And when the jury came back at noon and found him guilty, someone in the courtroom, and it would have been anyone in the courtroom, screamed out, "Get that nigger." And one of the worst and cruelest treatments of a human being began. Jess was kicked down out of the courthouse, down the back steps where a crowd of several hundred was waiting.
Wow.
They put a chain on his neck. There were 16,000 people crowding the street to watch this boy be tortured. Jess was tied to the chain over a branch of a tree. The fire was started. They raised Jess from the fire up into the air so that the crowd could see him. There were cheers, like at a football game, cheering the torturers on. When Jess tried to climb up the chain, hand by hand, they cut his fingers off one by one, so that all he could do was slap the chain. They lowered him back down in the fire. A man came up and castrated him. Another man kept a pole so that he couldn't crawl out of the fire. And time and again, they pulled him up to keep him from dying so that the crowd could be satisfied. Until he finally died.
Now that's Sam Holmes. There was two of them.
The hardest part I've seen in my life, and I'm the chief of the tribe, is when we come up against people of color as well as European descent, and we say Indians, they're looking.
I don't know what happened, but it recorded the second video also. But that video was basically saying that this is what happens. This is what happens. And we deny the name that was given to us in our native Hebrew language. But we keep all the prisons and everything else that this world provides. The end of that is talked about Mexico. The exact same thing. The exact same thing.
I don't know why people know that there is something that's not right, but then when you try to bring them the truth, they fight you on it, and they rather accept a lie. And that lets me believe, when we go back and look at Yeshaya's ministry, Yeshaya had a hard ministry.
Yes.
His ministry was not easy.
No, it's not. Genesis chapter 41, verses 1 through 4. We're not even halfway through this teaching. Let's read it.
And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kings and fatted shed. And they fed in the meadow. And behold, 7 other kings came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other king upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored king and lean flesh king did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kings, so Pharaoh awake.
Okay. So Pharaoh had a dream.
Is it king or cow?
Kind? Is it kind or
It's king. Those are cattle. Same thing. So Pharaoh didn't understand his dream. So what he do? He go to the world. Genesis 41, 8 through 16.
And behold, 7 thin ears and blasted with the east. And behold, 7 thin ears and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh awake, and behold, it was a dream. And it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled, and he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, and there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh.
So he didn't go to the Most High. He went to sorcerers, magicians. That's what the Egyptians do. They don't know the Most High. They got a God for everything there is. This is what's wrong with the world. You'd rather go to some demon-possessed soothsayer than to the Most High. But what happens is that, remember, Joseph was in prison. And he was in prison with a couple of people from Pharaoh. So what do? When they're in desperate need, that's when they go to Israelites. Verse 9, and let's read it.
Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my fault this day.
So he's saying to the Pharaoh, you know what? He starts to suck up to the Pharaoh to get prestige because he knew that Joseph interpreted his dream in prison. So he knew that there's somebody who can do it. So Pharaoh, guess what? Oh, buddy, I got somebody who can do it for you, who can interpret this dream. So this is what they do. It was 2 years later, and this guy, in order to get favor from Pharaoh, says, I know a guy who can interpret your dream. 2 years, not a word from him. Verse 10 through 16.
Pharaoh was wroth with his servant, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, a Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard. And we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream, he did interpret. And it came to pass as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored unto mine's office, and him he hanged.
So he interpreted the dream that the one was going to be hanged, and the other one was going to go back to Pharaoh's court. Verse 14.
Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his raiment, and came in unto Pharaoh.
Egyptians don't like hair. That's why, in order to be presented to Pharaoh, Joseph had to shave his entire body. Okay, because Egyptians don't like hair. They didn't like hair. Right. 15.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I have heard say of thee, that thou canst understand the dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace.
Still giving Father the glory. We can't all take the credit from the Most High. Okay? We'll get into Moses a little later. All right, Genesis 49, verses 29 and 30. Let's read.
Behold, there come 7 years of great plenty throughout all the land of Egypt, and there shall arise after them 7 years of famine, and all the plenty shall be forgotten in the land of Egypt, and the famine shall consume the land.
And the famine shall consume the land. So he's telling them what's going to happen. Verses 33 through 36 talks about when Pharaoh took heed of Joseph's warning. And Joseph had told Pharaoh, gather the food up during the good years, store them up, so that, and keep these storehouses in all these cities. So therefore, when the famine comes, we'll be able to tax people, and they'll be able to come and get food. Okay? So Joseph really instituted the first laws of taxation. We did it to ourselves again. There were no taxes in the land. There was no taxation in the land until Joseph instituted this. Now see, the Most High gives you a little, he gives you something, and you take it and you go all out with it. But he still was being shown favor. Genesis chapter 41, verses 41 through 44. And let's read.
And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, see, I have set thee over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh took off his ring from his hand and put it upon Joseph's hand, and arrayed him in vestures of fine linen, and put a gold chain about his neck.
He was being restored, just like the prodigal son was being restored when he came back to the father. And the father gave him a ring and put it on his finger. The father gave him clothing and put on. He gave him shoes to put on. And he also killed a fatted calf. Same thing. 43.
And he made him to ride in the second chariot which he had, and they cried before him, bow the knee, and he made him ruler over all the land of Egypt. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I am Pharaoh, without thee shall no man lift up his hand or foot in all the land of Egypt.
Okay. So Joseph ruled over Egypt. But what's wrong with this next scripture? Genesis chapter 41, verse 45. And let's read it.
And Pharaoh called Joseph's name Zaphenath-Paneah, and he gave him to his wife Asenath, the daughter of Potiphar, priest of On, and Joseph went out over all the land of Egypt.
Somebody tell me what's wrong with that.
Gave him an Egyptian name.
Gave him an Egyptian name.
Oh, that's stuff started back then.
Started back then. Gave him an Egyptian name.
I think it's kind of sad if people can't accept they
Gave him an Egyptian name. He said, you're not going to be called Joseph no more. That's some kind of crappy Hebrew name. I'm going to give you Zaphenath-Paneah, whatever that is. Zaphenath-Paneah, Hafalafaliyah. It's a bunch of Zaphanapa garbage. Remember what Brother X said about our names, or what Brother Malcolm said about our names. They give us names. They inject those names in us so that we can, even though Joseph was second in command, he still was below somebody. Genesis 41, 56 to 57, and let's read.
And the famine was over all the face of the earth. And Joseph opened all the storehouses and sold unto the Egyptians. And the famine waxed sore in the land of Egypt. And all countries came into Egypt to Joseph to buy corn, because that the famine was so sore in all the land.
The famine was worldwide.
So that's the same how our people, they, even back then, that's where it started, using our people to build up other nations.
Right. Exactly. Pharaoh just did that to build up Egypt. Egypt was a world power at that point to make it more strong.
Can you imagine the money that they got? Everybody had to come to them, the only source.
Right.
To the gold and the silver and...
Now, I'm going to point out something. From 17 to 30, Joseph suffered but never turned away from the Most High. 30, he became the second powerful man in Egypt. Joseph's wife was an Egyptian. She was black, right?
Yeah, but it wasn't by his choice.
And she is the mother of Ephraim and Manasseh.
Yeah.
Okay? But I'm going to show you something else too. Okay? Genesis chapter 38, verses 1 through 3, and then we're going to jump down to verse 6. Let's read it.
And it came to pass at that time that Judah went down from his brethren and turned to a certain Adulamite, whose name was Hirah. And Judah saw there a daughter of certain Canaanite, whose name was Shirah. And he took her and went into her.
So he married a Canaanite woman. And that was very frequent back then. Because the 12 brothers did not have nothing but one sister. So who are they going to marry? There were only 12 brothers. Who are they going to marry? They married Canaanites.
Because they was in Egypt, though.
They were outside of Egypt.
Oh, yeah.
Verse 3, and let's read.
And she conceived and bare a son, and he called his name And Judah took a wife for his firstborn, whose name was Tamar.
Tamar. Okay? These two women were Canaanites. Went into her, we know that means that they had relations. Judah's wife was a Canaanite. Tamar is the mother of the Jews through her union with Judah. Tamar was a Canaanite.
Yeah.
She was not an Israelite.
That's something annoying.
A Canaanite woman is the mother of the black Jews, or Judah. But Issachar, same thing. Not Ephraim. Ephraim was just a child. Reuben, same thing. Asher, same thing.
All their wives was
Canaanite women. They couldn't have been Israelites. Why? Why couldn't they have been Israelites? Why couldn't they have married Israelite women?
There wasn't any.
There weren't any. There was only one sister. They're not going to go hump their sister. That's incest. Are we getting it?
Yeah.
Genesis chapter 41, verses 46 through 48. And let's read.
And Joseph was 30 years old when he stood before Pharaoh, king of Egypt. And Joseph went out from the presence of Pharaoh and went throughout all the land of Egypt. And in the 7 plenteous years on the earth brought forth my handful.
He's just storing stuff up to get ready to tax them later. Verse 48.
And he gathered up all the food of the 7 years, which were in the land of Egypt, and laid up the food of the cities, the food of the field which was round about about every city, laid he up in the stone.
The same. So Genesis 41, verse 53 to 54 says, and in the 7 years of plenteous that was in the land of Egypt were ended, and the 7 years of death began to come, according as Joseph had said, and the dearth was in all lands. So famine was everywhere.
So don't you think the Most High also used Joseph to do all that to save our people as well?
Right. But I'm just pointing that taxation was started by Joseph. Okay? So famine was all over the place. The whole world was in famine. The whole world at that time that was known. Okay? Well, famine was all over the world. Genesis chapter 42 verses 1 through 3 says, and when Jacob saw that there was corn in Egypt, Jacob said unto his sons, why do ye look upon one another? So they're looking at each other like, what we gonna eat? Verse 2, he said, behold, I have heard that there is corn in Egypt. Get you down thither, and buy for us from thence, that we may live and not die. And Joseph's 10 brethren went down to buy corn in Egypt. We know that Benjamin stayed behind. Okay? Now, same chapter, going down to verse 7 through 11. And Joseph saw his brethren, and he knew them, but made himself strange unto them, and spake roughly unto them. And he said unto them, Whence come ye? And they said, We come from the land of Canaan to buy food. So they're saying, we're from Canaan. They didn't recognize Joseph. Why? Because Joseph was 17 when they sold him. Right now, he's probably 38. And he's in full Egyptian garb. And Joseph knew his brethren, but they knew not him. And Joseph remembered the dreams in which he had dreamed of them, and said, Ye are spies to see the nakedness of the land, ye are come. And they said unto him, Nay, my lord, but to buy food there are servants to come. This was the dream that Joseph had. Remember earlier, he had a dream that the brothers were going to bow down to him. What happens is that sometimes when we have dreams, we go and we blurt it out before it comes to pass, and it hurts people. You prematurely go and start blabbing your mouth when the Most High ain't told you to do nothing. When the brothers of Joseph, the sons of Jacob, had entered the land of Egypt, they were told to see a particular person. Not knowing the individual that they were going to see, when they faced him, they didn't recognize Joseph because he was decked out in Egyptian clothes. If Joseph was white, they would have spotted him immediately, because the Egyptians were black. Okay? Genesis chapter 42, verse 18 to 24. And Joseph said unto them, the third day, this do and live, for I fear God. If ye be true men, let one of your brethren be bound in the house of your prison, though ye carry corn for the famine of your houses. But bring your youngest brother unto me, so shall your words be verified, and ye shall not die. And they did so. They didn't even, first of all, they never mentioned Benjamin. So that should have been a clue. Wait a minute, how does he know we have a younger brother? But because, whatever circumstances, they didn't pick that up. Immediately, somebody should have said, wait a minute, how do you know we had a younger brother?
That also let you know that Benjamin was born before Joseph was sold into slavery, so you knew about him.
Correct. And they said one to another, we are verily guilty concerning our brother, in that we saw the anguish of his soul. When he besought us, and we would not hear, therefore is this distress come upon us? And Reuben answered them, saying, Spake I not unto you, saying, do not sin against the child. And ye would not hear. So now they're arguing backward and forth. Reuben is saying, remember I told you? Now they think that it's coming back to get him again. They think that Joseph wants to bring Benjamin in to put him in slavery, just like they did to Joseph. And then Joseph is really playing this thing, because now Joseph is talking through an interpreter. So really they're not understanding what's going on, because Joseph now is talking through an interpreter.
So he's speaking Egyptian.
He's speaking Egyptian and not Hebrew. Okay,
Yeah,
that's verse 23. Because that would have gave it away. So he's speaking through an interpreter, even though he knew what they were saying. He knew, he spoke Hebrew. So he knew what they were saying, right? Joseph was at least 37 or 38. Egyptians and Israelites are the same cloth. Let's get Genesis 45 verses 1 through 5. And let's read this.
Then Joseph could not refrain himself before all of them that stood by him, and he cried, was every man to go out from me? And there stood no man with him, while Joseph made himself known unto his brother.
So he told everybody and all his servants, get out, except for these men right here. And then he said, you know what, I can't hold this up anymore. It had to be emotionally tearing him up on the inside. He said, I can't do this anymore. I have to tell you that I'm your brother Joseph. What did they say? Let's skip down to verse 3 and read.
And Joseph said unto his brethren, I am Joseph. Doth my father yet live? And his brethren could not answer him, for they were troubled at his presence.
They were in shock. This is Joseph, second in command of Egypt. They were in shock right now. Verse 4.
And Joseph said unto his brethren, come near to me, I pray you. And they came near, and he said, I am Joseph your brother, whom ye sold into Egypt. Now,
go ahead.
Now therefore be not grieved nor angry with yourselves that ye sold me hither, for God did send me before you to preserve life.
To preserve life. So he heard them arguing backward and forth about Joseph, about him being sold into slavery. He heard them going backward and forth with it. He couldn't contain himself anymore. Okay? Let's skip never mind. Joseph could not continue to play his brothers. His brothers were so shocked, he had to tell them twice. The word for black in Greek is Egypt. So let's go down to verse 9 and let's read it.
Haste ye, and go up to my father, and say unto him, thus saith thy son Joseph, God hath made me Lord of all Egypt. Come down unto me, tarry not.
Okay. Joseph knew that the Most High made him who he was. So let's see what Jacob says in Genesis chapter 45, verses 26 to 28. And let's read it.
And told him, saying, Joseph is yet alive, and he is governor over all the land of Egypt. And Jacob's heart fainted, for he believed them not.
He didn't believe it. He didn't believe it. Verse 27.
And they told him all the words of Joseph, which he had said unto them. And when he saw the wagons which Joseph had sent to carry him, the spirit of Jacob their father revived. And Israel said, it is enough. Joseph my son is yet alive. I will go and see him before I die.
So he knew that he was going to die. He was well in age. And he said, you know, I'm going to go see my son before I died on. I think Jacob probably understood the lesson that he was taught by playing favoritism. Okay? So then now Jacob is now dead. But there's something I want to point out here. Let's read Genesis chapter 50, 5 through 11.
My father made me swear, saying, Lo, I die, in my grave which I have digged for me in the land of Canaan. There shalt thou bury me. Now therefore let me go up, I pray thee, and bury my father, and I will come again.
So Pharaoh deciding, okay, you go ahead and bury your father. Let's go down to verse 8.
And all the house of Joseph and his brother and his father's house, only their little ones and their flock and their herd, they left in the land of Goshen.
They left for the land of Goshen. So then there was a huge procession. A huge funeral procession. Okay? But let's skip down to verse 11 and let's read.
And when the inhabitants of the land, the Canaanites, saw the mourning and the floor of Atap, they said, This is a grievous mourning to the Egyptians. Wherefore the name of it was called
Abel-Mizraim,
which is beyond Jordan.
So they thought that there was an Egyptian being mourned. Once again, showing that people of color are the Israelites. They thought that the Canaanites, who were dark also, thought that the Egyptian, this must have been a mighty man of Egypt. Look at all these Egyptians. They were Israelites. Okay? Before Israel became a nation, they were 12 brothers and 1 sister. They married other black women who were not Israelites. But where does the bloodline follow? The father. Not the mother like the Roman Catholic Church. I want to put this up here because the next video is going to be with Marcus Garvey. And if you've never heard of Marcus Garvey, I would highly suggest that you look him up. Okay? Marcus Garvey was a Jamaican political leader, publisher, journalist, entrepreneur, and orator who was a staunch proponent of the black nationalism and Pan-Africanism movements, to which end he founded the Universal Negro Improvement Association and African Communities League. He founded the Black Star Line, which promoted the return of the African to the ancestral lands. He was all well and good, but there's one thing that was wrong with him. He was sending people back to Africa and not Israel. But of course, Israel wouldn't accept this anyway. Okay? Let's listen to the Honorable Marcus Garvey.
Wheresoever you go throughout the world, the black man is discarded, is ostracized, is relegated to the lowest in things, social, political, and economical. This therefore suggests a problem and one that must be solved. We in this section of the world are not entirely free from this unkind, unsympathetic, and uncharitable behavior of the groups or races around us. But since man has been placed on his own responsibility, whether he be black, white, or yellow, he must act on his own account. We will not unduly whine or complain, but reason among ourselves and see what can be done to remedy this state of affairs. Life is a conflict. You have to fight your way through it whether you will it or not. Those of us who are able to fight most stubbornly live, accomplish most, and to them go the laurels, the palms, and triumph of our civilization and world. We unfortunately have not been trained nor educated in the truths of life, paradoxically so. May I say something to you to give you a true knowledge of yourself and life, so that the same glory and success attained by other men who understand themselves may be yours. Man in the full knowledge of himself is a superb and supreme creature of creation. When man becomes possessor of the knowledge of himself, he becomes master of his environment, the captain of his own ship, the director of his own destiny, the accomplisher of his own ends.
Did you hear what he just said? Somebody repeat what he just said.
When man has a knowledge of himself?
No.
Yes.
Becomes the master of his own state.
The captain of his own ship.
We play that in Kansas. Apparently y'all listen to this.
He becomes master of his environment, the captain of his own ship.
Master of his environment, if you know who you are.
The director of his own destiny, the accomplisher.
Destiny, a director of his own destiny.
Of his own ends. Man should understand himself because man is full of knowledge, and this knowledge is a gift of nature. When Mother Nature created man, she deprived him of nothing. He was given the faculty of understanding all things around him. And this faculty for understanding has not been taken away from him. None of his senses have been taken away from him. So there is no excuse for the black man in lacking the knowledge that man is used to beautify the world and produce all that he needs for his happiness and civilization. Look the world over, and whatever you see in it that is pleasing to man, contributing to man's comfort, to his needs and to his satisfaction, it is but the work of man. Man blessed with the knowledge of himself and the understanding of all things around him. If you are able to live with the knowledge of yourself and with the greater knowledge of nature, you must know what is good and what is not. You must know what is finite. You must know that which is material, physical and otherwise is at your disposal to create or otherwise use. If we leave America and go over to the east to Japan, they will be telling their fellow citizens of Japan of the wonderful accomplishments of the Japanese people, proving that man is moving onward as time moves on. But you have hated yourselves as you have done in previous years.
Well, let me explain something, okay? Let me explain something really quick. These men, you have to listen to what they're saying, okay? Pan-American, Pan-African, that's some kind of wild out, whatever. But I want you to pay attention to what he's saying, not what he's religion of. It's very important we pay attention to what he's saying. Why he's saying the stuff that he's saying. If these brothers was in the truth, they probably wouldn't even make it. They would be dead. Okay?
You have shown malice, prejudice, and hate to each other. And the result is that while other races have made progress, while India has made progress towards nationalism, while Ireland has made progress towards republicanism, while the whole world has made progress in man's accomplishments, you still stand fighting yourselves, dishonoring yourselves, showing no disposition toward that higher life so that you will be abundantly blessed. So reflect and think that you were created for some purpose other than exhibiting malice toward your neighbor or fellow men of your own race. What a pity it is that we cannot stand united without the written law. There is no written law compelling other races to stand together. They are brought together by the gentle touch of nature. The unwritten law of nature causes them to stand together on all occasions. So wheresoever you find them in the field, that one gentle touch of nature causes them to stand together, if need be, die together. But with the black man, you can preach to him from the pulpits. You lecture from the platforms, from the byways and the hedges. The spirit of cooperation, but he will not cooperate. You talk to him gently, you try talking harshly to him, he still will not cooperate. The result is that he falls prey to those who understand themselves and walk through the world making you their serfs and slaves. We must acquire the higher knowledge of life. Black men and black women, will you get the knowledge that the white man has that causes him to be leaders and masters in the world? They are not gods with a peculiar source for understanding the world around them. They have only given expression to the knowledge of their humanity and been able to use and conquer all to their satisfaction and glory. And that is why they are always greater than you in every community that you find them. Isn't it strange that wheresoever the white man is found, he takes precedence over you? Why is that so? Answer that for yourselves, black men and black women. Wheresoever you come in contact with the white man, you always have to go down in defeat before him. Whether it be in England, in France, or in America, you always have to go down to the white man, and yet he has 2 eyes, 2 feet, 2 hands, same passions, same senses and feelings as you have. Your feet are not put on opposite sides, now your hands turned around the other way. But it's because you fail to use your will, your knowledge and your mental faculty to the point where you will enjoy life around you. It is against us as an African people. It's not because of color. It's because of our condition. If we must have justice, we must be strong. If we must be strong, we must come together. If we must come together, we can only do so through the system of organization. But to fight for Africa that teaches you to depend upon another race is a leadership that will enslave you.
That's right.
They gave leadership to our foreparents, and that leadership made them slaves. But we decided to find a leadership of our.
Do you still want leadership, or do you want ownership? We have to be, we must rise up. As the 12 tribes. Or else we're going to be in a condition where we'll never, ever, ever succeed in anything that we do, because we're always looking for handouts. Always.
And I saw a video and the elder was preaching, and he said that the 12 tribes are always looking for these other nations for handouts and to ask them for something. And the elder said, do you think Yeshua would go and stand on the steps and ask the Romans for anything?
Right.
No.
That's
you
good.
think the disciples would do it?
No.
The disciples, no. They would
So
ask the
why
Romans
do
for
we?
nothing.
Exodus chapter 1. We're not going to, well, 1 through 12. We're not going to read through all of it.
Now these are the names of the children of Israel which came into Egypt. Every man in his household came with Jacob.
Okay, so now we got the 12 brothers. Let's skip down to verse 5 and read.
And all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls. For Joseph was in Egypt already.
Okay. So Joseph was in Egypt. 70 souls, meaning 70 people. Out of these 70 souls, I believe there were 54 men. Let's read.
And Joseph died, and all his brethren, and all that generation.
Okay, so the 12 tribes, each of them had died. I believe they lived about 120, 130 years. It's in the book of Jasher. Let's skip down to verse 8.
Now there arose up a new king over Egypt, which knew not Joseph.
He didn't know Joseph. He probably didn't care about Joseph. You know, he wanted to keep them as slaves. Before we get this, I need 1st Esdras, chapter 9, verse 37. It'll come up on here. But I need 1st Esdras, chapter 9. First Ezra chapter 9, verse 30. And then Matthew 6:24. Let me go back for a second. I want to know if you all see this. See right here? Zoom by? Okay. When we read 1st Ezra chapter 9, verse 34, it has different peoples in that scripture. So when you read it, you're gonna see that these people are the Israelites. Right now, this is Brazil. Who is Brazil? Asher. Okay? So it's going to point out different things on it. Just want to show you. See, Mani is in there. Congo. Kai Congo, which is tribe of Yah something. That's Strong's Concordance H2296. This is in 1 Esdras chapter 9. Tribe of Ephraim is listed as Lena Galad something. Okay? Kai Congo is in Angola, but also it's also in Cuba and the Dominican Republic and Haiti.
So all our history, all our stuff is right
Castilla, Hispania, Africa. First Esdras chapter 9. First Esdras chapter 9:34. We should have that ready, and also Matthew 6:24. We should have that ready. These are all the different words that are used for African, but they are translated as Hebrew words.
I'm really excited to be able to.
Okay, so then it goes into these kids and they're finding out where they are. We don't need to see that. But I want you to read First Esdras chapter 9, verse 34. Take your time with it.
And the sons of Mani, Jeremias, Mamdis, Omaras, Joel, Mabadai, and Pelas, and Anos, Carabasan, and Nisabas, and Mamatanas, Elias, Banis, Eliel, Samus, Selemius, Nathanias, and the sons of Ozora, Sias, Asriel, Azalos, Samatus, Zambis, Josephus, and the sons of Edmas, Mazatias, Zabadias, Edis, Joel, Benias. Keep going.
Okay.
30, that's 34, right?
This is 30. That was 30 and 35.
Okay, go to 30, keep going to 37.
All these had taken strange wives, and they put them away with their children. And the priests and the Levites, and they that were of Israel, dwelt in Jerusalem, and in the country, in the first day of the 7th month. So the children of Israel were in their habitations.
In their habitations. If you take those list of men, you can trace those, and you can actually find out where they are today. The video showed a few of them with Asher, Judah, Hispaniola, I don't know what that is. Hispanics. Oh yeah, that's right. And it was one more. I forgot. But those were all listed, and those are all in the Apocrypha, and those are the 12 tribes of Israel. Now let's get Matthew chapter 6, verse 24, and let's read it.
No man can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or else he will hold to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and mammon.
You cannot serve God and mammon.
So if you sin it during a week and then you kind of come and be holy on the Sabbath, who you serve? Who you really serve?
All right, so let's get back to scripture. And verse 10 says, "Come, let us deal wisely with them, lest they multiply." And it came to pass that when they were fallen out of war, they would join us unto our enemies and fight against us, so get them up out of the land. Again, they're keeping burdens on us. That video, Planned Parenthood, which we asked you all to watch, plays very important in what this is going on.
Yes, it does from the very beginning. The eugenics, something with, what's her name?
Let's read verse 12.
But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew, and they were grieved because the children of Israel.
If you saw that video, you would understand more on what that scripture means with the eugenics program. Exodus, the first chapter, verse 15 through 17.
And
let's read 16.
And he said, when you do the office of a midwife to the Hebrew women, and see them upon the stools, if it be a son, then ye shall kill him. But if it be a daughter, then she shall live.
Eugenics. Eugenics.
Right there.
It's right here in the Bible. Planned Parenthood. It's right here in the Bible. Exodus chapter 1, verse 22, and let's read it.
And Pharaoh charged all his people, saying, every son that is born ye shall cast into the river, and every daughter ye shall save alive.
Eugenics. Why were they killing the males?
Weren't they looking for?
I'm sorry?
Weren't they looking for? No.
No. So the bloodline can stop. Stop the bloodline. Stop these people from reproducing, because a woman can't reproduce by herself. So kill the seed. Eugenics. 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 The first Israelite slavery happened in Egypt. The new king rose and did not know Joseph. He afflicted them with hard bondage. He told the midwives to kill the male infants, abortion. The man carries the seed, therefore the child is whatever the father is. 53 Israelite males who had no wives, so they had to marry Canaanite women. This was right after they came back into Egypt with Jacob's body. Really. This is before Exodus. Because they had to grow. And now they're multiplying all over the place. Next, while the Israelites were living in the land of Egypt, Pharaoh had commanded for all Israelite males to be exterminated. Planned Parenthood again. The daughter of Pharaoh wanted to bathe in the Nile, went to the banks and saw a basket, and opened it and had a baby. Being that the baby was very young, she instructed a Hebrew family, coincidentally the baby's mother, to nurse the child. Once he was weaned, she kept the boy to her father and asked if she could keep the child. Father said yes, and they named the baby Moses. I'm about to say Noah's. Now, if Moses was white, like these movies and everything show him white, Pharaoh would instantly know that, hey, wait a minute. What is this white baby doing in here? Right? Once again, proof that Moses, we know he's from Levi, he's a Haitian. Levi.
Moses.
Okay? Exodus chapter 2, verses 1 through 12. We're not going to read through all of it. Let's start at verse 1.
And there went a man of the house of Levi, and took wife a daughter of Levi. And the woman conceived and bare a son. And when she saw him that he was a goodly child, she hid him 3 months.
When they say goodly child, what they're saying is that his constance was of the Most High. Okay? He didn't come out frowned up and all that. His consonance was of the Most High. She saw the Most High in him. Okay? That's what that means. So let's skip down to verse 6 and read.
And when she had opened it, she saw the child, and behold, the babe wept. And she had compassion on him and said, this is one of the Hebrews' children.
So she knew, the Pharaoh's daughter knew that this is a Hebrew child. But you know what? She felt compassion for him because he was a goodly child. If he looked ugly, she probably would have said, oh, this is Hebrew child. Dunked him in the water. But he had the countenance of the Most High on him. Okay? Let's go to verse 8 and read.
And Pharaoh's daughter said to her, go. And the maid went and called the child's mother.
Called the child's mother. Let's skip over to verse 10 and read it.
And the child grew, and she brought him unto Pharaoh's daughter, and he became her son, and she called his name Moses. And she said, because I drew him out of the water.
All right, and let's go to verse 12, and this is what happens. Verse 11. And let's read verse 11 and 12.
And it came to pass in those days, when Moses was grown, that he went out unto his brethren, and looked on their burdens, and he spied on Egyptian, smiting in Hebrew one of his brethren. And he looked this way and that way, and when he saw that there was no man, he slew the Egyptian and hid him in the sand.
Okay, finally Moses lived among the Egyptians for years. One day, when he saw the Egyptian abusing a Hebrew, he took matters into his own hands. Then he went in the land of Midian. And when he went to the land of Midian, he met with some women and he helped them. They were grateful, and they ran back and told their father that an Egyptian saved them. Okay. During his travels, Herodias kept a journal of his activities, and in the bold yellow it says, it is certain that the natives of the country are black, that there can be no doubt that the Colachans are an Egyptian's race. I made this inquiry on the subject both of Colchis and in Egypt, and I found that the Colchans had a more distinct recollection of the Egyptians than the Egyptians had of them. My own conjectures were founded first on the fact that they are black-skinned and have woolly hair. That was the Egyptians then. Okay? I'm going to show you something later. Exodus chapter 2, verse 15 through 17. And let's read verse 15.
Now when Moses heard this thing, he sought to slay Moses. When Pharaoh saw this thing, he sought to slay Moses. But Moses fled from the face of Pharaoh and dwelt in the land of Midian. And he sat down by a well.
Okay, so this is when the daughters come up, the daughters of the Midianite priest. And let's read verse 17.
And the shepherds came and drove them away. But Moses stood up and helped them and watered their flock.
Watered their flock. Remember, Midianites were Abraham's children also, so they were black. Okay? Exodus chapter 2, verse 23.
And it came to pass in process of time that the king of Egypt died, and the children of Israel sighed by reason of the bondage, and they cried, and their cry came up unto God by reason of the bondage.
Pharaoh did not know the child he brought up was an Israelite. If he knew that Moses was an Israelite, he probably would have had him killed. But he didn't know that Moses was an Israelite. Okay? The Midianite sisters mistook Moses for an Egyptian because they were the same color, black. So let's get Exodus chapter 3, verses 1 through 7. We're going to skip down to verse 10. But let's read verse 2 and 3. So go ahead.
And when the angel of the Lord appeared unto him in a flame of fire out of the midst of a bush, and he looked, and behold, the bush burned with fire, and the bush was not consumed. And Moses said, I will now turn aside and see this great sight, why the bush is not burned.
Verse 4.
And when the Lord saw that he turned aside to see, God called unto him out of the midst of the bush and said, Moses, Moses. And he said, Here am I.
He said, Here am I. Okay, let's skip down to verse 7. Verse 7, and let's read.
And the Lord said, I have surely seen the affliction of my people, which are in Egypt, and have heard their cry, by reason in their taskmasters, for I know their sorrows.
So, verse 10, and let's read it.
Come now, therefore, and I will send thee unto Pharaoh, that thou mayest bring forth my people, the children of Israel, out of Egypt.
Out of Egypt.
You know, that's what when that flower was on fire in the office. And he was like, I thought I was like Moses with the burning bush. When he started blowing on it. He was standing there just watching it. I guess he was waiting to hear something.
Yeah, I was waiting to hear something. Exodus chapter 4, verses 1 through 3. Let's get verse 1 and read.
And Moses answered and said, But behold, they will not believe me, nor hearken unto my voice, for they will say, The Lord hath not appeared unto thee.
That's what people say today. You sure you heard from God? You sure this? You sure? No, I don't believe that. I don't think so.
If you're saying they're going to receive $500 or $5,000, I receive that. But if it's
All right, Exodus chapter 4, verse 6, 7. This is very key. Let's read it.
And the Lord said furthermore unto him, Put now thine hand into thy bosom. And he put his hand into his bosom. And when he took it out, behold, his hand was leprous as snow.
If Moses was white, then why would that be such an amazing? Verse 7 and read.
And he said, Put thine hand into thy bosom again. And he put his hand into his bosom again, and plucked it out of his bosom. And behold, it was turned again as his other flesh.
It was turned again as his other flesh.
Why doesn't the Bible just specify?
He was a man of color. So now Moses is in Midian. This is Exodus chapter 4, verses 19 to 23. Moses is now in Midian, and he's getting ready to return to Egypt. Okay. Now, verse 20 is very interesting. Let's read that.
And Moses took his wife and his sons, and set them upon an ass, and he returned to the land of Egypt. And Moses took the rod of God in his hand.
Isn't that interesting? We've been told that Moses did, his wife and people stayed behind.
And the movies portray that as well. Like he left his wife and children.
But it looks like his wife and children were with him in the Exodus.
Yep.
All right.
It was right there next to him.
Later on in the wilderness, his father-in-law comes up. There's no mention of his wife being with his father. That's in the movies. His wife was always there with him. See what happens when you read the Bible? Let's get it. Verse 22 and read.
And thou shalt say unto Pharaoh, Thus saith the Lord, Israel is my son, even my firstborn.
23.
And I say unto thee, Let my son go, that he may serve me. And if thou refuse to let him go, behold, I will slay thy son, even thy firstborn.
See what happens when you read the Bible for yourself?
You know, all this time, I thought Moses had left his wife and children.
See what happens when you read the Bible.
Because even in the movies, they got Moses' son, wife mad at him. And the son's like, who is this man? And she said, oh, he's just so-and-so. Like, they didn't know.
That's to show us because what happens when men of Judah, Issachar, and Gad, what do? They leave their families. They leave their families. So the media portrays that as him leaving his family. Because the media know that you all aren't going to read your Bibles. They know that. So you'll rather sit there and watch a movie and say, oh, Moses left his family. It's okay for me to leave my family.
Even if you're serving the Most High, it's okay to leave
your
family.
Same thing with Peter. Peter's family was with him. They never was apart. Read your Bibles, people. I cannot stress that so much. But let me go back. Firstborn, Israel is the first nation the Most High adopted. Yes, the Most High adopted Israel. And we got a teaching coming up in a couple of weeks about the adoption. Okay? The Israelites' last name is Israel. This is what I wanted to get at. If you noticed in the Bible, nobody has a last name.
No.
Why? Because everybody's last name was Israel. Everybody. Why there weren't any last names in the Bible? Because everybody's last name was Israel.
All Israelites. Yeah. Exactly.
We have the names of the slave masters, but some people are starting to change it. And me, myself, I'm going to change my last name.
What you mean yourself? I'm your wife.
I'm
change our last name too.
I leave that. I mean, when I was doing this, I was like, you know what? Nobody, and I looked in the Bible, and there's nobody in the Bible with a last name. Why is that? Because we are all Israelites.
That's our name.
That's why.
Yeah.
Israel was our last name.
Yeah, the last name is like your origin, but me your origin.
Thank you, Sister Fat.
Okay, we need somebody to look into this. get us the prices.
Already
I think
kind
it's
of
like
started.
$100
$20, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh no.
That's why I haven't
no.
changed mine, because I don't have it. It's not that much. It's
All right, let's get back. Leprous. White as snow means his hands was turned white, which is a big deal for Israelites. His hand was turned back to his other flesh. Clean leprosy is when all the flesh is white. Unclean leprosy is when it's covered with boils and the fingers or limbs are mingled. Two different types of leprosy.
I didn't know there was such thing as a clean leprosy.
Yeah, we just read it. The Most High is not going to afflict you with some kind of boils. When the Most High put the leprosy on Moses, it was clean.
Oh, yeah.
So, leprosy today is virago?
Leprosy today is unclean if it has the boils and mangled.
No, like what they call it. Like people
Oh.
with the pigment.
No,
Yes,
that's,
that's
what is that? What is it?
Say it again.
Virago. It's like when your skin turns
Turns white.
white.
Auntie Josie had that, remember?
That's
Her
not
skin was
leprosy though, right?
Yeah.
It is, but
It
they
is?
tell you it's something else.
Virago. But I'm saying that's modern day.
Yeah,
Virago.
they don't
Yeah.
call it leprosy anymore. They changed the
Okay.
breed.
Great. You all know more than I do about that.
Bunch of experts in it. Why am I getting
All right, so let's get Exodus chapter 12, verses 1 through 3.
And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, This month shall be unto you the beginning of months. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, And the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house.
A lamb for our house. So we all know that this lamb is really representation of Christ. All right, let's get down to verse 5 and let's read it. And something interesting with verse 5 also. Let's read it.
Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. You shall take it out from the sheep or from the goat.
Or from the goats. We have been told over and over again that it was a lamb from sheep. But here clearly the scripture is saying they either killed a baby lamb, a baby sheep, or a baby goat. Which would kind of make sense because on the Day of Atonement, we had two what? No, we didn't have two lambs. We didn't have two sheep. We had two goats. Kind of makes sense.
Get goat in the yep.
Right? Verse 6.
And you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month.
What is that? What holy day is that?
That's the unleavened bread. After unleavened bread is the Passover.
Passover.
That's how I remember it.
You read?
And you shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. And the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper doorposts of the house, wherein they shall eat it.
Christianity says that that's the cross that they're emulating.
Christianity.
It's a cross with
This represents Christ. So now let's get down to verses 29 and 30 and let's read when you don't follow the Most High. And go ahead.
And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle.
So everything was smote. In the book of Jasher, it stated that if the person was dead and they were the firstborn, the dogs dragged them out of the grave and just threw them out there. So even the dead, if they were firstborn, they were also part of this as well.
But ain't that like, kind of like, they reap what they sow from killing the Israelites? When Moses was born, it was killing the firstborns.
Right, I see what you're saying. Correct. but this is kind of quickly. Verse 30 and read.
And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians. And there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house where there was not one dead.
Right, because even in the house where the person who died, the dogs would would dig up the graves, drag the body, and drag the body in the house.
So that means firstborn child, animal, livestock, anything.
Anything. Correct. Sinners will die in their sins. The sinners will die in their sins. No forgiveness. None. Let's get down to verse 40. And let's read it.
Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years.
430 years goes back from Abraham to the Exodus.
So our people are not in slavery for 400.
Correct. We were not in slavery 400 years. We were in slavery for 240.
240,
Yeah. 240 or 250. Yeah.
Not no more than that.
It's in 1st or 2nd Corinthians. Switch gears. Psalms chapter 106. We're not going to read through the entire verse 16 and 27, but I do want to start at verse 16 and read.
They envied Moses also in the camp, and Aaron the saint of the Lord.
Verse 18.
And a fire was kindled in their company. The flame burned up the wicked.
19.
They made a calf in
Horeb
and worshipped the molten image.
You know that calf is being Yahweh, correct?
Yeah.
Verse 20.
Thus they changed their glory into the similitude of an ox that eateth grass.
So they changed. When they started worshiping that golden calf image, they now depict themselves as nothing more than the ox eating grass. Verse 21.
They forgot God their Savior, which had done great things in Egypt. Wondrous works in the land of Ham, and terrible things by the Red Sea.
Terrible things by the Red Sea. Verse 24 and read.
Yea, they despised the pleasant land. They believed it not his word.
They despised the pleasant land. That's why we're not there now.
Kick us out.
But, verse 25.
But murmured in their tents and hearkened not unto the voice of the Lord.
Verse 27.
To overthrow their seed also among the nations, and to scatter them in the lands.
Bible people, when it talks about seed, what is it referring to?
Offspring.
Offspring, semen, correct.
White stuff.
All Ham descendants are dark colored, and so are Jacob's children, but Israelites are Shemites, not Hamites. Psalms chapter 79, verses 49 and 51. And we're almost done. Let's read it.
He cast upon them the fierceness of his anger, wrath and indignation, and trouble by sending evil angels among them. He made a way to his anger. He spared not their souls from death, but gave their life over to the pestilence.
This is a God of love and peace and joy. Read.
And smote all the firstborn in Egypt, the chief of their strength, and the tabernacles of Ham.
So how can he love everybody if he's smoting firstborns? That's very... The tabernacle of Ham is Africa. Okay? That's the tabernacle of Ham. It's not where we live. It's not motherland. We're not going back to motherland Africa. Here's a map, and of course we can see here is Ham. Here is where Shem was. We were called the Desert Kings. Desert Kings. Kings of the South. Okay? That's where we were. Israel is right up in here.
Which is the central of the earth, right?
Correct.
We got some geography stuff.
All right, let's go to Matthew chapter 1, Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 through 3. And of course, this is something that we already know, but let's read it.
Now when Yeshua was born in Bethlehem of Judea in the days of Herod the king, behold, there came wise men from the east of Jerusalem, saying, Where is he that is born King of the Jews? For we have seen his star in the east, and we are come to worship him.
Herod wasn't going to share that. Verse 3.
When Herod the king had heard these things, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him.
So not only was Herod troubled, but everybody in Jerusalem was troubled too, because I was like, wait a minute, who is this king? What is this king? So it wasn't just Herod, it was all of Jerusalem.
Welcome, truth seekers. If you're ready to know the truth, then you come to the right place. Hebrews to Negroes touches on various subject matters and topics that are too controversial to be said or shown on TV or talked about by most of our educated black leaders. This is the kind of information that they do not want you to know. Most people are scared to reveal or stand for the truth because of fear. Fear of repercussions that alter their comfort zone of living. But I have no fear, and I didn't sign my soul over to the devil. My God is very real, and he stands for the truth. It's easy for the media to call someone militant, racist, anti-American, terrorist, or anti-Semitic if they are simply trying to preach a message that goes against the agenda. Well, my message is for the betterment of my black people. I am for black empowerment and black independence. I am for the truth. I did not make Hebrews to Negroes to promote racist views. I did it because black people need to know the truth. At the end of the day, when we die, we will all know the truth, and if our religious beliefs were right. At the end of the day, the salvation of our soul was most important, but if race and skin color didn't matter, then why did the powers to be in this world go through so much trouble to hide the truth from the public for so many years? If Jesus was black, and if the original Jews, otherwise known as the Hebrew Israelites, were black, then why has this knowledge been covered up? When our past black leaders tried to unite us, they were met with assassination or mysterious death. Since the death of black leaders such as Medgar Evers, Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, Bob Marley, Marcus Garvey, Tupac Shakur, and Huey Newton, we have not had any more leaders willing to stand up for the truth. Now, Bob Marley once said, no man can lead man, we have to have unity. Well, he was right. As blacks, we have been in America for over 500 years, but yet we are still at the bottom of society. There are roughly 45 million black people in America. We outnumber Jews, Indians, Asians, and Arabs combined in America. So why do we continue to work for everyone else? Why do we keep making them rich while we stay poor? Why can't we stick together as a people and rise to the greatness that we once were? By putting out Hebrews to Negroes, I expect some people to get upset and mad, but the truth needs to come out. If this information starts reaching too many people, I expect people to ridicule the information, attack my character, or to attack me financially or physically. I expect people to call me racist, pro-black, militant, or even anti-Semitic, but the truth is the truth. The truth speaks for itself, so these are not my words. Satan and man cannot prove this information to be wrong, so he will resort to other tactics to stop the truth from coming to the light. Using the media, people can be convinced or swayed to believe anything Satan and man wants them to believe. Remember, the majority of all the TV channels we watch in America are not controlled by Indians, blacks, Latinos, Arabs, or Asians. Only those who have eyes to see and ears to hear will not be blinded by Satan in these last days. My mission is to wake up Black America and people of black descent all over the world, because a storm is coming and we need to be prepared for it. The time is now for us to wake up. So if you agree with my mission, my beliefs, and my message in Hebrews to Negroes, please help me and my team make a difference.
I would highly encourage that you try to look at that.
What was his name? gonna send it to somebody.
Huh?
I'm gonna send it to who wrote it? Like sometimes you would write that, but other stuff.
Okay. Matthew chapter 2, verse 7 and 8.
Then Herod, when he had privily called the wise men, inquired of them diligently what time the star appeared. And he sent them to Bethlehem and said, Go and search diligently for the young child. And when ye have found him, bring me word again that I may come and worship him also.
So he was lying. He was going to kill. Very interested on this one, but I mean, we pretty much know this. Matthew chapter 12, verse 12 through 15. Joseph was awakened in a dream, and Joseph was told to take the child and flee into Egypt. When he was told, he did what he was told, and they went into Egypt. Now, we've been down this path before. If the Egyptians were white as they are depicted in TV, or if Christ is white as depicted, then there would be somebody would be caught. If Christ was white and he was going into Egypt, which are blacks, he would stand out. Thus, we know that Christ was of color. And of course, Revelation chapter 1 and Daniel chapter 10 tells us that. Star means angel. Herod tried to kill Yeshua. Herod was an Edomite who converted to Judaism. Joseph, Mary, and Yeshua went into Egypt to blend with other blacks. If Yeshua looked like the images we see today of blonde hair, blue eyes, then he would have stood out in Egypt, and he would have went to Europe. This is Great People of the Bible, page 301. Palestine in the time of Yeshua were overran with Edomites. They ruled over Judea. They were not real Jews, but converted Edomites. Edomites were some of Esau's children. Okay? Edomites today are your world power leaders of today, or the Jewish monetary system. People in high-ranking power, in high-ranking positions. Paul was black. Let's get Acts chapter 21, verse 37 through 39. I want you to focus on verse 38. Now, you know what? Read verse 37 and 38.
And as Paul was to be led into the castle, he said unto the chief captain, May I speak unto thee? Who said, Canst thou speak Greek? Art not thou that Egyptian which before these days madest an uproar and leddest out into the wilderness 4,000 men that were murderers?
What did Paul say? Verse 39.
But Paul said, I am a man which am a Jew of Tarsus, a city in Sicilia, a citizen of no mean city, and I beseech thee, suffer me to speak unto the people.
So they thought he was an Egyptian, meaning they thought he was black. Well, they saw he was black. Paul was mistaken as an Egyptian. He was black. He was a Hebrew Israelite from the tribe of Benjamin. Amos chapter 9 verse 7 says, Are ye not as children of the Ethiopians unto me, O children of Israel, saith the Lord? Have I not brought up Israel out of the land of Egypt, and the Philistines from Caphtor, and the Syrians from Ker? Very interesting. 2 million, the last 2 million years, page 381. Islamic rule was from 639 AD to 1798. The Arabs conquered the Egyptians. Since the 7th century, Egypt has been an Arab country. Two million years continue. Why did the Lord liken Israel to the Ethiopians instead the Egyptians? This is Amos 9:7. Remember that? Because he knew that the Arabs would take over the land of Egypt and call themselves after it. Today, these people in Egypt who are pale, calling themselves Egyptians, when the true Egyptians are black, their new name is Nubian.
Oh.
Those are black Egyptians. So the Arabs calling themselves Egyptians and the Edomites calling themselves Israelites, while the true Egyptians, Nubians, are in poverty in Egypt, and the true Israelites are scattered in poverty in the isles of the Gentiles and everywhere else as the so-called African American, black Negro, etc., whatever. Everybody know who Amari Stoudemire is, right?
Mm-hmm. He's a baller. How long have you had that problem?
As we all know, with the African American community, we are being somewhat attacked culturally, physically, and mentally. I decided to put a quick letter together. I feel like it's very important for us as athletes, entertainers, and so forth to use our platform to affect our community in a positive way. In the words of Dr. King, America is essentially a dream. And from the looks of things, the so-called African American community appears to be walking with their eyes wide shut. As for our forefathers, they were brought to this nation as slaves, and we are suffering from a serious identity crisis. In one generation, we were called and referred to as colored, then Negroes, Afro-American, blacks, and eventually African Americans. Who are we people? But this is not by accident. This is the hand of God, as it is written. In Deuteronomy 28, verse 36 through 37, the Lord will bring you and the king which was set over you into a nation which you or your fathers have known. And there you will serve other gods, wood and stone. And you will become an astonishment, a proverb, and a byword among all nations where the Lord will lead you. And this is one scripture out of the entire Bible. I can show you plenty more. With that being said, I ask that this be viewed not merely as a statement, but as a call to action. In the near future, I'll be sponsoring a community development roundtable meeting with some other concerned, proactive community leaders. It's time that we stop thinking as individual persons and begin to mobilize as a unified people. Peace and love. Amari Stoudemire.
When athletes start speaking out against, being Hebrew Israelites, you better start getting your stuff ready to pack.
That's right. That's all. Because I'm like, how old is that video? What's going on? You know?
It's this year.
Oh, man.
When athletes or singers or whoever start speaking out and saying they're Hebrew Israelites, it's time to get ready to pack your stuff. It's time to get ready. Because Christ is coming very, very soon.
It's a lot of rappers have came into the truth.
We got this article, Islamic in Timbuktu. Here. I want you to read the highlighted portion. Why is this stuff happening in France? Let's read it.
The Al-Qaeda jihads who came to dominate northern Mali soon drove out the Tuaregs. They also imposed a violent and draconian version of Islam on its inhabitants.
Oh, there. We all know that the people who are in Timbuktu, the blacks who are in Timbuktu, are originally Hebrew.
Right.
Okay, we did that teaching a couple of weeks ago, right?
Right.
Okay, let's read.
Who have long been known for practicing a moderate and tolerant form of Islam. Music, long central to Malian culture, was banned. There were public hand amputations for alleged thieves, and the gravesite shrines of venerated Sufi saints were toppled. This past January, France sent troops to the region to help them mount.
Who sent troops to the region?
France.
France. Read.
The rebels quickly retreated without a fight, but not before setting fire to the city's library.
The Islamic rebels. Now remember, Timbuktu was where we were living. Now it's overran by Ishmael. Go ahead.
Which housed thousands of medieval manuscripts from the period when Timbuktu was the capital and the storied cultural center of North Africa's Songhai Empire.
So they burned their history.
Go. Is that it?
Yes.
Go to the next page. It's more. Read it.
Hadaro's work and a book he wrote, The Jews of Timbuktu, sparked interest among those Jew descendants. None of them considered themselves to be Jewish, but some of them, Zakor, also known as the Timbuktu Association for Friendship with the Jewish World, a local organization aimed at strengthening the Jewish identity of the descendants. The group's main achievement was a manifesto issued in May 29, 1996, calling on the international Jewish community and on the respective presidents of Mali and Israel to recognize that we are Jews because of our ancestors. We're Jews whose genes were found in all our families. Certain men recovered more ancient manuscripts, furthering proving the real Hebrews were blacks. And in 2014, after the French seized Timbuktu from Islamic rebels, those manuscripts were lost again. The statement published in a local newspaper also makes clear that the descendants are not seeking new religious or national allegiances. It is God who made Timbuktu our land of refuge, and we are Muslims.
Okay. Now, what I'm going to say may be controversial, but it don't matter. When you do wrong, it comes back on.
That's right.
The French came into Timbuktu, where we were residing, and destroyed everything. The Arabs who were there, and this is what I mean when I say the Most High will put a spirit on somebody to defend you. Put the spirit on the Islamic people who were there. Why do you think that stuff is going on in France right now? France came in to Timbuktu, took it over, destroyed it, burned our artifacts. They did this in January of this year.
Oh, I remember that. I saw that on the news.
Ishmael stood back. It was like, wait a minute. Now, Ishmael is attacking France.
Yeah.
This is why. No sin goes uncovered.
Well, they're going to destroy each other anyway.
I showed that to show that if you're serving the Most High, even your enemies are going to start fighting each other.
Yep.
Acts chapter 13, 1 and 2. Let's get it.
Now there were in the church that was at
Antioch.
Certain prophets and teachers, as Barnabas and Simon, that was called Niger, and Louis and Cyrene and Benin, which had been brought up with Herod and Tertullus.
Okay, so right there it says, we know who Barnabas is, right?
Yes.
We should know who Barnabas is. Barnabas? We know who Simon is, right?
Yes.
Niger. It was never nigger. It's Niger. The people in the South, the white man couldn't say Niger. They say nigger.
Niger means black.
So they say nigger. They couldn't
He
say
also
Niger.
was called black because he was blacker than the rest. We know this because Israel did not associate with anyone but an Israelite. Remember, this is Acts 13. So at this point, the Israelites weren't going to the Gentiles. Yes, in Acts chapter 10, Peter went, but they were still strictly sticking with Israelites.
So
Okay?
we was always called black.
I'm sorry?
So we was always called black.
You can say that, sure. Amos chapter 2, verses 6 and then 9 through 11. Let's read it.
Thus saith the Lord, for 3 transgressions of Israel, and for 4 I will not turn away the punishment thereof, because they sold the righteous for silver, and the poor for a pair of shoes.
They sold the righteous for silver. Let's talk about Joseph. Okay. Verse 9 and read.
Yet destroyed I the Amorite before them, whose height was like the height of the cedars, and he was strong as the oaks. Yet I destroyed his fruit from above, and his roots from beneath.
Okay, remember when in the wilderness they had to come up against the Amorites.
Right.
Okay, verse 10 and read.
Also I brought you up from the land of Egypt, and led you 40 years through the wilderness to possess the land of the Amorite. And I raised up of your sons for prophets, and of your young men for Nazarites. Is it not even thus, O ye children of Israel, saith the Lord?
There were only Israelites in the early church. Paul had not been converted. Leviticus chapter 13, verses 12 through 13 says, and if a leprosy break out abroad in the skin, and the leprosy covered all the skin of him that hath the plague, from his head even unto his foot, wheresoever the priest looketh, then the priest shall consider, and behold, if the leprosy have covered all of his flesh, he shall pronounce him clean that hath the plague. It is all turned white. He is clean.
So
that's where we get the clean leprosy from the unclean leprosy.
So what about the people that's not white all over?
What do you mean?
They have leprosy. It's
But
just like spots and spots.
That's not leprosy, that's something else.
That's all.
That's leprosy.
No, it's not.
It's not no vitiligo or whatever they call it.
It's unclean.
Yeah. It's not. It's leprosy.
It's unclean until, according to the Bible,
It all turns white.
it all turns white. So, if the skin turns white, he is clean. Big deal for white people, but even bigger deal for black people. Why?
Because they're darker.
Because they're clean. Oh.
Let's get Matthew chapter 1, verse 5 and 6. I'm sorry, Matthew chapter 10, verses 1 and then 5 and 6. And this is the last scripture. Go ahead.
And when he had called unto him his 12 disciples, he gave them power against unclean spirits to cast them out and to heal all manner of sickness and all manner of disease.
So if it's not totally white, it's sickness. It must be cast out. Verse 5 and read.
These 12 Yeshua sent forth and commanded them, saying, go not into the way of the Gentiles, and into any city of the Samaritans enter ye not, but go rather to the lost sheep of the house of Israel.
We have to go and raise up Israel before we can go out to the Gentiles. Israel needs to be raised up again. Blacks, Hispanics, Native American Indians need to be raised up again. We are to go to the lost sheep first. We don't know who we are. We are lost. Okay? So, Father, we give Father all the praise and all the glory on the Bible teaching on color. Next week, we're going to have a double teaching on the Hebrew marriage and how families should act. So we give all praise and glory unto the Father. Father, we thank you for this Bible study. We pray, Father, that it wakes up and opens up our eyes, make us see who we are as a people, make us understand who we are as a people. Let us know that we are your chosen people. Arise in us a spirit, Father, where we can go and speak to our brothers and sisters who are lost and profound your word with the scriptures that we have. Yeshua's name, amen.